Well, shalom Torah fans. This is Michael Root. I am in Gulfport, Mississippi. We are going to launch off on one of the greatest adventures that you have ever been on in your life. Ladies and gentlemen, if you think walking by the Spirit is going to be a picnic, you are in the wrong business. Yeshua said, you want to follow me, grab an execution stake and get in line. The world is going to hate you. The professionals are going to hate you. The professional religionists who have manufactured the religions to incarcerate you, to intimidate you, to manipulate you in all of their academics, which is to try to deny the reality of the Spirit and the power of the Almighty God. All this world is going to come against you, and if you think it's going to be easy, you are in the wrong group. If you want life to be simple, want life to be sweet, want to have peace on earth, Yeshua said, I came to bring a sword, not peace. If you want peace on earth, go to church. Join the rest of the world. But if you want to go on the most amazing adventure of your life, you are at the right place. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I have with me today, right here in Gulfport, I brought you to the home of Jim and Penny Caldwell, the American oil field engineers who for years were able to get the evidence of the real Mount Sinai out to the Western world. Jim, Penny,
wow.
It is so good to be with you here.
Oh, Michael,
So good
it's
to be with you.
fantastic to be here with you.
Well, Jim,
What an introduction.
In order to tell this story, because you are in the 20 millionth chapter here, and so
Like
I have been privileged to be a part and to see the last 20 years. You've been on this a much longer the trail than I have, and when I heard your story and then see the hand of the Almighty as He has moved, and as I say, this movie, Patterns of Evidence, would not happen without you. It could not happen. The whole introduction of David Roll, who was the one that put together Egyptology, who was the one that really broke it for him to understand that there is another way of looking at this, that the professionals had deliberately twisted the scriptures, deliberately twisted history, made big mistakes that they don't want to admit because their entire academic career is built on these foundational mistakes. It was Hugh who put his book in the hands of Tim, and without David Roll's input in this, it wouldn't have happened. So on so many layers and so many levels, you are the ones instrumental in making this first version happen, and we've got another version coming, don't we?
We do.
We've got more to
The
tell
follow-up
of
to
it.
this will be phenomenal.
That's right. So these are the people, ladies and gentlemen, that have provided all of the evidence. Anything that's been seen out there, anything that anyone's had, all came from Jim and Penny from their years in Saudi Arabia. Jim, Penny, tell us, why were you in Saudi Arabia to begin with? Where does the story begin?
In 1988, I accepted a job with the oil company in Arabia. We'll just say that. I had to gather my family.
Okay,
up.
so you're saying there are some things that we're not going to say.
You caught it very quickly.
Okay, all right.
Specifically, but anyway,
all right.
Yeah. If anybody doubted that, we have a lot of evidence to show you we were there. So it's
exactly right.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But it was in the Eastern Province. We flew over January of 1988, and I was oil field DCS, Digital Control Systems Engineer. Basically, is what I did. I worked in the largest oil refinery in the world, Ras Tanura oil refinery. We did about 22 million barrels a day we could process. You could walk down the main header. It was 90 inches. Tells you how large the pipe was. A man could literally walk down through the system. I was, as part of my job, we would work a rotating shift. I was out there on evenings This was December of 1991. And I was doing a routine, went around, I went to all of the control rooms, asked the Saudis, if we had any issues, and would do my thing, take care of problems. And I went into my office, and for some reason I was just, it was 3 years in, and the Gulf War had just completed. Saddam Hussein invaded. We had the issue of the whole Gulf War, the Scud missiles flying over our home. She had been evacuated. Our lives were in turmoil at that moment. But I went into our office, and I didn't turn the light on. It was dark. It was probably 7 or 8 at night. And I sat down at my desk, and it was dark, a few LEDs glowing in the room. And Michael, I sat back, and I looked just kind of looked up at the whiteboard that was sitting in front of me. I could barely see it, but it was like an old movie projector turned on. I could hear like you could hear the click of the wheels, and this thing started rolling. I actually saw an image of the Ark of the Covenant coming through the desert, being carried by 4 men covered, and then a man out in front of him coming through a desert scene, passed in front of me, and the man in front turned, and when he looked at me, I heard a voice, and that voice said, I'm taking the Ark of the Covenant back to where it was built. You are going to go there, and you are going to find it. And I looked back, and behind him was another cart, other folks, back following, and then poof, disappeared. Now, I'm a logical thinker.
You're an engineer.
I'm an engineer. I'm in the business of seeing the unseen. People look at computers and think it's magic. Buddy, it's digital. It's math. It works. Logically, there's a reason why things happen. And that's kind of the way my mind works. So for me to have a vision, or if it's a vision, or to see something like this.
What you're describing, we see all through the Scripture.
It does.
Completely
And
unexpected.
she assured me I'm okay.
Unwanted, many times.
Sometimes, yes.
Unwanted. I've never had anything
what happened
like
to
this.
you? What moved in you at that moment? What was your outtake from that?
My outtake was stumbling out of the building, walking for 2 or 3 miles, trying to understand what I had just seen. She came and picked me up in the evening at 11 o'clock, and she said I was white as a ghost.
It
like
was.
My hair had been
It really
blown
was.
straight back. Didn't know. And I get in, and I'm lit up about the Ark of the Covenant. We're going there. I don't know where it is. I don't know anything about it, but we're going to do it. And she's just, she's backing up going, what's happening?
It was.
Who
It
is
was
this
like,
guy?
what on earth has happened? But you know what it did? Immediately, Michael, he took out Exodus, began to read it thoroughly, bit by bit by bit. He made all the rest of us. Our son was about 9 years old, our daughter about 7 at the time. We even, would you believe it or not, I know the Cecil B. DeMille 10 Commandments movie is not exactly precise to the scriptures for sure, but
Very
to have
dramatic.
our kids watch it over
had
and
a-
over and over again, because his
Okay.
immediately he decided, we're going to Mount Sinai, because Mount Sinai is where the Ark of the Covenant was built, and it's got to be there. So we're going to St. Catherine's in the Sinai Peninsula. And as soon as we were able to do it, he was packing us up and we were ready to go.
Okay, now I know a little bit more of the story in that you began to detail what you should be able to find there because of what you're reading in the biblical record.
That's right.
As an engineer, that was kind of where your brain went.
Exactly. I actually had to tear out, first off, the Cecil B. DeMille's 10 Commandments she saw was smuggled in. You cannot have those kind of films
That's right.
in Saudi Arabia. That's one
That's
thing.
right.
Also had a Bible, which is not allowed. I tore out the book of Exodus, taped it up, made it and bound it so it would hold together, and would smuggle it into the refinery in the evening so that I could have a place to study.
Okay.
And I went through the book of Exodus in detail. If you were going to go to Mount Sinai and you were going to be visiting and looking at this place, what should you see there? It talks about the mountain, talks about
And
Moses
so this is
being
something you
gone.
actually wrote
I
down.
started
You
writing
had the
down.
list.
Later on, I describe it as an Adena kit. In other words,
Okay.
it is the things you should see. Pillars, cave of Elijah. You should see, the way the mountain is structured, a brook flowing out on the Sinai side in the wilderness
Okay.
of Sinai. Just one thing after another.
Right,
And,
because we're given a real progression of events, what
Right.
happens from our Exodus through the 7 weeks that bring us to the mountain when
Exactly.
the commandments
Right,
are made.
right.
So it's very
Precisely.
clear. It's right in order.
Right.
Now, this is now something that you have in your hands, and so now you make your plans to get to St. Catherine's. So, of course, it's the
Exactly.
only place that you know of.
Just a bit of logistics. I mean, to get there from where we were in Ras Tanura is a 26-hour drive just to get to the Jordan. And then in order for us as being citizens of the country, not citizens, but having a legal igama to live in the country, a work visa, we would have to travel across country. That would be like I say, 24 to 26-hour trip. And then we would take the Arab Bridge out of Jordan, which is a ferry that would bring us into
Right,
Nueva.
because you can't go through
That's right.
Israel
You can't get there.
to
That's
get
right.
to Egypt. You
That's
can't
right.
do that crossing.
You can't.
You have to go directly from Saudi Arabia, Jordan, then and then get on the ferry. And where does the ferry end you?
The ferry brings you from Aqaba to Nueva. I mean, that's
Nueva, Egypt.
Yeah, to Nueva, Egypt.
That's exactly
Okay.
right.
But think about this. I'm asking her and my two children to drive across Arabia, break every rule of traveling that you can imagine. In other words, you never travel by yourself. That was the first
Not breaking
rule.
the law.
Not
but
breaking
just
the law. I'm
rules.
just talking
No,
about
just to be smart. You don't travel
being
by
in
yourself.
a foreign country, number one, being in a desert, break down. Of course, I had a 30-gallon gas tank. I had all of our equipment. I had spare batteries. I had a spare tire, 2 spare tires. I mean, I did everything I could to make it as safe as I could do it. But between the time that this happened and the time we left, we only had 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, we had to prepare quickly and then get on our way.
Now, there's something I think I ought to add in here is because, you got 2 spare tires, you've got all this. You really spent a lot of time in the desert. I mean, once
we
you got in
did.
Saudi Arabia, you didn't hang around the compound. It's
No.
like when work was
No.
done, you had a few days off.
I was a
You were
desert
out
bug.
camping in the
bet.
middle of nowhere.
Oh,
you were on all these
absolutely.
ancient sites.
Absolutely.
You really had complete free reign and free run of the entire land of Saudi Arabia, did
right.
you not?
Within the first 5 months that we were there, we found another couple that they had a 4-wheel drive. We had a 4-wheel drive. And we literally, we hadn't been there but 5 months. In the first series of days that he had off, we took off to Jordan with 2 trucks, just 2 trucks full of cars, and drove all the way up into Jordan and up to the Syrian border. And nobody really does that. You just are not
you guys
supposed
are
to do
adventurers.
that.
I mean,
So,
it's in your blood.
But we started
both scuba divers. I mean,
Yes.
from your
Oh, yeah.
teens.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
we're not talking about desk jockeys here.
No,
I mean,
no.
you guys are adventurers.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so now it's like the adventurers have been chosen. You make the trip, you get to Nueva, Egypt. Now something very significant happens that ties it all together. Tell us about that.
It absolutely does. We no sooner rolled off that ferry and into the whole customs arena when we found out quite quickly that we didn't have the right paperwork. There was this ethereal thing that we didn't know about that we needed to have called a triptych. And that was to allow you to drive your vehicle into Egypt. And really what it was all about was they didn't want you driving a vehicle into Egypt, selling it while you were there, and then them not collecting their taxes.
It's all about taxes.
Ah.
Yes.
So
I thought it was
you
all
had
legal
to-
under the table money that they wanted.
Well, they wanted that too.
wanted that
Oh,
too.
oh,
Yeah. We had
What
to cough
ended,
that
what
up.
ended up, bakshish, what ended up happening over a 2-day process
Yeah.
is that we had to do intense negotiations between him and a dear little guy named Sammy that we met at the hotel we were going to be staying at.
Okay.
And Sammy was instrumental in helping him be the translator between us so that we would finally, after paying quite a bit of Egyptian pounds, get all the stamps we needed.
Mm-hmm.
And then we finally had the proper paperwork. And as a result of that, we got to be pretty good friends with dear Sammy, who was at the hotel we were staying at.
That's right. And your children are the same age.
Same age
As
as
his
his
children,
children.
yeah. So
Yeah,
they got
it was-
along
it was
very
a-
well.
They gave you a nice
Yes.
suite to stay at, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a really cool thing to see a little Egyptian boy and girl playing with a little American boy and girl, could not speak a word between themselves, but they had a blast playing out there. So after all of this
A
hubbub,
blast. I hope that's a
we
figure
had
of speech.
Yeah.
well, yeah,
Oh, okay.
a blast as in a
For
good
children.
time.
Okay,
Good
okay,
time.
good.
But as a result of that, we were finally able, because the burning desire was to get to the real Mount Sinai, which was, of course, the traditional Mount Sinai at the tip of the Sinai. That's all we
Okay,
knew.
now
That's all we knew.
something else happened there with you coming into that port. You'd planned on going out of Alexandria at the end of this thing.
That's
Right, so-
exactly
so-
right.
But you were then
In the process of getting the we call it a triptych, they gave me a set of plates for my vehicle that I had to put on. And the instruction was that I had to exit the country at Nueva on that ferry. So we had almost 40 days to go through Egypt.
and
You know,
you
we were
couldn't
spending that
go
time.
out early.
Couldn't leave early,
Yeah.
right? We couldn't leave early, and we were going to go a different route to leave the country.
Mhm.
This put us in a position where we had to go back through Nueva.
Okay. Now, from there, you go down to
We go to the traditional Mount Sinai. So
what hit you when you arrived? Because now it's been how much weeks of intense study and how
about
long
4
is it?
weeks. Well,
About
4
weeks.
weeks. This has
The
been on fire.
expectation to
That's
get
right.
there. You saw a vision that brought you to Mount Sinai, where the
Right.
Ark
Right.
of the Covenant was made. That was the picture.
Right,
Right.
right.
What
Right.
happened when you got there? Were you excited, overjoyed to finally get?
Excited to turn the corner and see, and then quickly, within probably several hours, it fell apart.
Yeah.
There was
Very
horrific disappointment.
Very disappointed.
We saw that there was a monastery there, and I knew these things that I had some expectation from what I would see.
Yeah,
But-
you
but
were
the-
raised as a Catholic boy, right?
I was.
mean,
I was,
So
Roman Catholic,
yes.
and I went through catechism and all of the things
And so
that you do.
you thought
you know.
that this was a place, but getting
Wasn't
there,
any question. There wasn't
something
any
happened.
question in my mind.
Yeah.
But what did get questioned was all of the information that I had put down from the Bible as in that identikit and identifying what we should see. None of those elements were there. I didn't
No.
see anything. I didn't see a provision for a stream coming out of the mountain. And of course, there would be no evidence. I mean, there's a monastery built in front of it. If there was ever an altar that Moses may have done sorry, that was gone, obliterated. We were hounded by the camel riders and the baksheesh, people looking for baksheesh to do different things. The other thing was the mountain is not impressive. It's not very high. You could see Moses standing on top.
Right,
what I'm
right.
saying?
How
What-
could you
how
lose him for 40
somebody?
days?
Exactly.
Didn't make sense.
Exactly.
I'm starting to I'm really at that moment, there's two things I'm questioning. Is the Bible true? Is it even accurate? Or is this an accurate description? Is there something wrong with that side of it? Or was there something wrong with me? I mean, but anyway, she sensed the disappointment and she knew that this was over.
Yeah.
That we were going to spend all this great time here looking around, researching, going in the monastery, reading, but I dismissed it. I said, nope,
Yep.
I was wrong. This isn't the place.
So how
It
many
has no
days did
connection
you
to our
spend
Bible.
there?
We did everything you could do in Egypt that as far as temples and tombs and restaurants and everything else for the next 38 days. I mean,
I mean at Helena Sinai. How many days did
one
you
day.
stay?
Oh, it's just one day.
There was
no,
one
you
day
don't
and
need,
you're gone.
You don't need more than 2 or 3 hours. But one day, look, you can climb to the top in a couple hours. It's not something that
It's
would
a little
be
bit. It's a little bit
maybe
longer
a little
than
longer.
that.
But you can take a camel ride up
Yeah,
there if you
yeah.
want to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
just it just doesn't have the feel if you want to go along with feelings of what you would
Okay.
expect Mount
And
Sinai
at this
to be.
point, this is all you can do. As an engineer, you did your identikit. Nothing fit.
Nothing
The
fit.
feeling of it is like a tourist trap, and we know what that's like.
Yeah.
I mean, Jerusalem's full of religious tourist traps.
Mm-hmm.
As I say, the Church of the Holy Peter, where Jesus had his first falafel. I mean, it's these are the kind of things that you see in those places like that. And
Very similar here.
yeah, so now you got 38 days, and now you're coming back around because now I'll tell you, I got just through watching the 4-hour presentation that is now available. I just got through watching that before we got together here, and it is. It is absolutely fantastic. You give details on there that people are going to want to. They're going to feel like they've been on the trip with you.
Yeah.
And that's what we want.
I take
And
those
it's wonderful.
38 days and crunch it into 3 minutes in
Yeah.
a little roll-in that I show, and it's hilarious.
So we're
But it was
making
a
that
good trip.
available for everyone
Right.
out there in
Absolutely.
cyberspace. This is what we want you to do. We want you to get a hold of this because you need to take this journey yourself. You're going to get a very abbreviated version, but you're going to get information this weekend that is not available anyplace else. And you're getting it directly from the only people who have ever been there to be able to actually bring out the artifacts and the evidence from Mount Sinai. So now we're going to take a 38-day journey in 3 minutes. We're going to do it on the video. But now we're going to get down to Sharm el-Sheikh. Sharm el-Sheikh, a lovely resort town. Penny, tell us a little bit about what happened at Sharm el-Sheikh, because now things are going to get really interesting.
Well, I tell you what, Michael, we were about approximately 3 weeks or so furthering down our way all the way through Egypt. We drove from Cairo all the way down to Abu Simbel, all the way back up. And now we're in the last few days of our journey. We got down to the very tip of the Sinai Peninsula, this place called Sharm el-Sheikh, fantastically gorgeous.
It's like the end of the Gulf of Aqaba.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And we had several days that we needed to stay there because we had to stay out of Saudi Arabia a certain amount of days. We could not cross that border back in until the prescribed time.
That's right, because a certain amount of time has to be spent out of country each year for an American.
Exactly. So it's a resort place. We had a beautiful place there on the beach that we were going to be staying. The kids were happy. They were playing in the sand, doing all these things. So each day we were going to spend probably 3 or 4 days there. And each day around lunchtime, we would go up. There was a small little store, mostly to have snacks and that kind of thing in there. You could buy this or that in there. You could buy a Coke, you could buy some chips, that kind of thing. They had a very small little bookshelf toward the back of this little store. We were going in there to just get, chips and stuff for the kids to be on the beach with. Going to come back out while Jim was getting whatever he wanted, the rest of the stuff that you wanted in there to eat. I went back and saw this small little bookshelf. Now, everywhere you go in Egypt, you have every manner of book and DVD. And, well, at the time, it wasn't DVD, it was VHS. But, they want to sell you all these products about everything to do with Egypt. Anything from any of the pharaohs or Hatshepsut or how they built the obelisks, anything and everything to do with that. So we get there, and at the bottom of this bookshelf with all these other Egyptian things, I saw a book that caught my eye. And that book is the Gold Mines of Midian. In fact,
this is the book. This is the actual book.
This actual book.
Okay.
And when I saw this, of course, I'm seeing it like this on the bookshelf. And I thought, goodness, that is odd. What in earth could that be? Because that certainly doesn't look like a book about Egypt. I pulled this book up and just began to flip through it a little bit like this and didn't realize until I got to here that there was an actual map in the back of this book. And when I got to this map, I am telling you, I nearly passed out right there in that bookstore. I don't know if you can get a close-up on this or not.
Well, we shall do just that.
Right over here in this area, there were some words that dropped me to my floor in that bookshelf, in that bookstore. It says right over here, the shoreland of Midian. And the shoreland of Midian was of high interest to us all of a sudden because of the fact that we knew from all of the studying that we had done, all the way up to our trip to the traditional Mount Sinai, we knew that Midian was where Moses was tending the flocks of his father-in-law Jethro.
That's
and
right.
What happened when he was tending those flocks? He had to turn aside to see a bush that was on fire and yet not consumed. And we know that it was the voice of the Almighty that spoke to him out of that bush, eventually telling him, you are the one who I have chosen to go and deliver my people out of the hands of the Egyptians, and you will bring them back here to me, and they will serve me on this mountain. So where is the mountain but in Midian? If we are doing the proper investigation in the Bible,
this
we
is
have
like
to be
number one in the identikit.
Yes,
should be.
Absolutely.
It would be. Yeah, it would
the
be.
mountain must be in Midian. What Jim and I did not know at the time at all, because we were sure the traditional site, after all, was the right one.
No reason to question.
But here,
at all.
Right.
in a map from the 1800s, 1878 was when the book was originally. This is a reprint, of course, but when that book was originally done, that map said that the shoreland of Midian was in northwest Saudi Arabia, and he and I just about went wild because the original vision that he had had a few weeks before was suddenly back prominent and right in the foreground.
Because
and we
you
said,
pretty well
we had let it go.
cashed it out after one day at Helena Sinai.
At Helena,
Exactly.
it was so disappointing that we dismissed the idea completely.
Yeah.
One thing about this book is there were 2 letters in this book that caught my attention. I sat there in 2 days, went through it. It's one of the most detailed, marked up, highlighted books that I own. And one of the things in the back here is 2 letters from Charles Beck. Dr. Charles Beck in the late 1800s went to the traditional site. His experience was just like mine. great disappointment. He knew something was wrong. He believed his Bible was true. I mean, this is true. So how could there be
right.
this difference between what the Bible says about this place and what I'm seeing?
Yeah.
And his life he devoted to going to the land of Midian, which people knew was in Northwest
Arabia.
I mean,
Okay, no
Yeah, I
question.
mean, there was no question. It had been understood.
Yeah.
Burton had detailed the map, shows it in the back. And so Charles Beck ends up writing a book called Sinai in Arabia. And there's a quote in there that we keep on our computers upstairs that says, "And time will prove me right."
And
Charles
Mount
that's,
Sinai is in Arabia.
In
But
Arabia.
he never
Yeah.
found it, though,
Yeah.
in his
No,
lifetime.
he didn't.
Yeah, this was
He
our
didn't.
first clue, and so it changed our complete thinking about the possibility of what this might be.
Boy,
Okay,
all,
so
all of
it
us.
here we
relit
go.
the fire at that
Yeah,
point.
the
we
next
were
day-
so excited. But we couldn't go back into
We
Saudi
still,
Arabia
yeah,
yet.
we were going to
We
stay
couldn't
where
do
we
it.
were until the last day.
Right, because it was beautiful there. I mean,
Yeah.
after all,
Mhm.
Right.
But the very next day, right around lunchtime, we go back in there to get, the Cokes and the chips for the kids and everything. I go back to this little bookshelf, and I am telling you, my eyes near bugged out of my head because a book that was not there the day before.
A very small
very
book that
tiny
was
little book.
like hiding behind something.
Yeah,
huh?
you can't miss this thing.
This book had been placed on that shelf. The Mountain of God by Emmanuel Anati. This was nothing that we had ever heard of before, and it had great revelation in it, just as this one did, showing the land of Midian in Northwest Arabia. Because the minute I pulled this book off the shelf, of course, the shopkeepers are going, "There's that crazy screaming woman again." Because I screamed back through the shop, Jim, come look at this book. It wasn't there yesterday. And Jim starts looking at this book, and lo and behold, this is a very prominent archaeologist, well respected, who, through this book, is looking at a place called Har Karkum, which you're very familiar with.
Yeah, I sat out on one of those peaks with Emmanuel Anati.
Absolutely.
There you go.
And I tell you the truth, what was the most amazing thing about this to us was that inside he listed a number of different locations for the possible Mount Sinai, which let us know that someone of hugely professional status knew that there was a big question as to where that real mountain was. We didn't know that before, but in 2 days became very convinced that we needed to go look for this mountain in Midian, which is
So here we've got
Arabia.
the testimony of Burton that comes up in English in a book in this little shop.
Yes.
About Midian. We've got Beck.
Letters of Beck.
Of Beck,
Yes.
who wrote the book, The Sinai is in Arabia. And then you have Emmanuel Anati. And one of the things, he had sort of an identikit, did he not?
Actually,
Yes, he did.
I borrowed that term from him. What I had done originally was build this list of things he calls it the identikit, but he does the same thing. He says, what should we find
there you go.
if we find the real Mount Sinai?
And see,
right.
So that dovetails, it dovetails into what I had done. Overlays exactly. But he lists those 13 sites that she mentions. And Jebel Luz, or Jebel Luz, as it's properly pronounced, is one of the mountains that's identified. And so we're looking at it, and it is right in the land of Midian where we can go and we can look. So we start
as a matter
immediately.
of fact, are you not going back that way?
We're going to pass
Absolutely.
right in that vicinity. You bet. So I whip out the NOAA maps that I have of the whole kingdom, and we start plotting a course based on his information, what we found in the gold mines.
In his
Midian,
map.
In his map, showing exactly where. Well, when you dovetail it over a NOAA map, it's a geological survey, has all of the elevations. You see Jebel Luz targeted on the map. I mean,
Yes.
it's a huge mountain, as well as another mountain adjacent to it called Jebel Makla. So there's two 8,500 foot peaks right across the Gulf of Aqaba that we're across from right now. Right across. I mean, you could see them if you walked out and looked across the beach. We had no idea until this book came into our hands.
And so
And
now,
so now we're on a quest.
Are you
so
going to go
speak.
there? Have you
Yeah,
decided you're going there at this point?
We're going there. No. She knows. We're the only thing that was a restriction is we had to stay one more day at that horrible hotel, the Hilton Hotel. One more day. And so we had to bear it, but that day, I tore these books apart. I mean, I went through everything I could find. You know, we detailed it.
Yeah.
We plotted
Okay.
our course, and we're ready. We're ready for bear.
Now, I have to say something on this because, ladies and gentlemen, you're talking about an engineer, an oil field engineer. What makes an engineer an engineer is not just because they went to school, it's just because the way their brain is wired, okay? Most people can't do this. Most people don't think on this level. They don't think this way. But it seems that the Almighty chooses people right from before they're born, wires them a particular way because he has a plan for them.
Yes.
And this is why we're all wired differently. You know, the way that we see things and process things, the Almighty has a calling for each one of our lives. And what he has done in Jim's life to bring this all together, now they are going to Mount Sinai. The revelation came from heaven. Now they're going to the one place that you can get to. Of the 13 places, this is the one
Only
place
place we can
and the
get
only
to.
place you can get to.
Exactly.
And you have authority to get there. You've got letters. You can do what you need to do, right?
That's
Absolutely.
exactly right.
But you have to stop back at Nueva,
Just, yeah.
which is not the garden spot of Egypt or any place.
No,
okay?
no.
So,
But you know,
yeah.
that was all pre-planned anyway, Michael, because as we were, when we came first, and I was sharing with you earlier how they immediately impounded our truck in customs. We didn't have the right paperwork. We had to go through 2 days of getting the right paperwork. One of their decrees, as it were, was that instead of leaving Egypt by a different route that we had planned to go a different route and not go back to Nueva and back to the across the Gulf of Aqaba on the ferry. We had planned to leave via Alexandria and go north,
Right.
the northern route. I didn't want to get back on that ferry again, to be perfectly honest.
yeah, I've seen that ferry.
It's old wore out Panama ferry is what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So now
But we were forced to go back to Nueva because one of the things, in order for them to give us that paperwork, we had to sign a paper saying we would exit the same port we
We came
entered
in on.
because they wanted to
Okay.
make sure that we were taking our truck back out proper. So
Okay.
this was the hand of the Almighty forcing these things
Right.
that at the time we
you
didn't
had
think-
no idea. You had no
No,
idea.
we
It was
had no
just
idea.
it was an inconvenience for you. Okay. Now you drive up to Nueva. What happens when you hit Nueva?
As soon as we pulled up, we were greeted by the gentleman that had given us so much help before. His name was Sammy. He came out, and it was like a hero's welcome.
Oh yeah.
The red carpet. He gave us the finest suite they had. I mean, he took us around, treated us like we were royalty, and super excited. He was smoking a cigarette and then 2 cigarettes, and very nervous. I
One in
started
each
picking
hand.
this up.
Typical
One in each
Egyptian.
hand.
Truly.
You know, lighting one right after the other, and I'm saying, what is going on with this guy? You know, we were okay. I
Seemed
mean,
to
we
be a
had a
bit
good
agitated.
time, but he was
Nervous.
agitated
Nervous.
and very nervous, and as like a man had a secret that he wanted to, you know, bring me aside. So that was it. He started to talk to me. I need to talk to you alone. You know, I need to get you on the side. And so he did. Finally, I walked away from her, and he kind of came over and pinned me against my truck, and he said, "You've got to get me into Saudi Arabia. There was a man here that showed me some things, and I just need, can you help me get in?" He could get a visa for a Hajj, a mini Hajj, they called it, and that he would ride in our vehicle to go into Arabia. And I'm saying, this doesn't work that way, Sammy. I mean, that's absolutely impossible.
Yeah.
He said, no, I've got to do this. Super excited, put a lot of pressure on me. So we talked back and forth. Well, finally, he tells me that he mentions a word that caught my attention, and that was the ark. He said, there's been a man here that says that the ark, something about the ark is over there, and he's pointing across the ocean, across the Gulf of Aqaba. And that was a clue. I said, okay, he perked my interest. As it turned out, he had a hand-drawn map or not a map, but a drawing on a napkin.
It was like a picture.
Like a picture. And he showed a mountain, and then he showed a cave, and then he showed some boundary markers. This is
This is all like
On a
like an
napkin.
illustration.
Yeah.
And then he shows me some cows. And he says, there's an altar there. There's these things, markers. He didn't speak real good English. This is what I gathered from it.
Yeah.
And these things started to connect to me in this identikit of things that you would find. Jebel Luz, the mountain of the almond, this location in the land of Midian. Now we're seeing a cave, which would be one of the things that Emmanuel talked about, being on the mountain. Elijah's cave at Horeb. And so suddenly, this re-energized, it's even if you could imagine more than ever that we were on the right track.
And
It was
headed to
as
the right
if
mountain.
God says,
Oh.
here's a map for you. You're going to take this with you, and then you're going to recognize what's there immediately.
Okay, now something has transpired in this as far as this agitation and all, because it turns out that he was offered quite a bit of money to be able to get this evidence and get it back to this person.
Didn't
Yeah.
realize it at the time.
Yeah, we
I
had
didn't
no
know that.
idea.
Yeah, I didn't know
He
that
certainly
that had
did
happened.
not share that with
Ah,
us at
okay.
the
I
time.
didn't know that at the time. So
We found
but-
it out later.
yeah, we found that out later. But
But that kind of makes it make sense.
This-
Why?
Yes.
You know, with that,
Why?
because I
Yeah.
know how much money was offered to him,
Yeah.
and so with that kind of money, for him to go out there and do that, you can see that.
oh, it
Oh.
would make him an instant millionaire, as you know, in their culture.
In their
Right,
culture.
right,
in their
yeah,
culture.
Right,
Quite
right.
wealthy.
But
yeah.
Yeah.
so it was a tremendous amount of money when I found out what it was. And so that was the explanation for why he was acting the way he was. But then the only way we were allowed to leave was he said that he had a brother in Tabuk, and that if we would go there and take the pictures, that we could connect with this brother of his
Yeah.
and maybe get
Yeah.
those pictures back to
him.
him.
And Tabuk
So that
is
kinda left it.
is a bit north of Luz,
We
right?
had to pass right through it to get on our way back to Rastanura. I
Right.
mean, it would
Okay.
be on the route.
Right.
And so
Okay.
I agreed to that. And he actually would not give me that napkin. I looked at it, and then I said, let's go. We went in the room, and then I drew it from memory as best I could.
He
And I said,
memorized
okay.
it.
So I memorized it. And so that was another bit of the puzzle. But there was one thing that was on it that was there was an arrow coming in from the north. I said, I wonder what that means. And he said, this is the direction you got to go in. Well, you know, the way I am, if something says one thing, I'm going to do the other. So when we went into the area, and thank God we did it this way, is that we actually entered the law's range from the south.
Well, you had planned that before we
but
got
I had
back
planned
to
that,
New
yeah.
England.
Mhm.
you
And I
used
stuck
the
with
NOAA
my
map.
original plan because
Yeah,
there
that's
was
why
some
you were-
visible, in the NOAA, they show dirt roads as dotted lines. And I could see those dirt roads as dotted lines. The other direction from the north was in the Wadi Abiyad. That's a wadi, number one, an ancient riverbed.
Okay.
And I was concerned about a number of things. Unfamiliar territory.
Right.
We're breaking the rules.
It changes
of
all the
travel.
time with dry riverbed.
yes.
Yeah.
We're now going off-road. This is another something that you don't want to do alone. We're going off-road
With your two young children. Mm-hmm.
Right, woman, and we have a truck, loaded with gear. And as it turned out, we ended up having a flat tire at the end of that trip.
Yeah, we did.
But it put us coming into the valley in a perfect way to when we turned and we were looking towards Mount Sinai, that we could see the majesty of the whole place. And it was because we pulled right up to this golden calf altar.
Yeah, we pulled up to
Okay.
the,
So
to
we
the
were
cows.
right on the right
In
track.
actuality, though, we could not see any of the things that were on that,
No,
that
they're
picture
yeah,
because
the
they're
distance.
so far behind the fence. We could not see from the valley.
Okay,
did
well,
not
we
see
don't
those
even know there's a
things.
fence there yet. So
Till
let's
later.
let me back up for just a minute,
Okay.
because
Sure.
this map that you or not the map, but the drawing of what was there at that mountain,
Right,
because
right.
you don't need a map to get to that mountain. That mountain is an established place.
Right.
Right, and
But-
we were using Emmanuel Anati's map already We knew where it was. We
Right,
knew how
and
to
now
get there.
you're using your very detailed topographical maps that you have as an engineer,
Right.
and so you can find your way out there. There's no problem. But at Nueva, what transpired when he was offered this money to go and do this, it turns out that the man had just left just 6
Right,
hours
right.
before you got there.
Like seriously,
That's right.
earlier,
So you
earlier
didn't-
that
So
day.
this is why he was so excited. I mean, this had just happened.
Right,
And and so he's on fire.
And now his friends are here. He's going to put you up to the best suite, and then he's going to hit you with "Take me with
Take
you."
me with you.
Take me with you.
I
You're
can't
my
even
ticket.
get in. I
You're
can't
my
get
ticket to
myself.
fame and
Exactly.
fortune.
Exactly.
Unbelievable.
Exactly.
Now,
Crazy.
because this is where we all come together on this particular thing, because that man was the one that crossed the Jordanian desert years before with his two sons.
Yeah.
Were able to get down there. But he told two people, this is Ron White.
Yeah.
He told two people, James Irwin and another archaeologist, that when he was going in, where he was going out, and it turns out that the archaeologist, not James Irwin, but the other man, called the Saudi embassy and reported that 3 Israeli spies were in their country, where to find them,
Yep.
when to find them. And so they were captured, put in Arabian prison for 76 days. All of the evidence that they had was all stripped from them. We heard about it in America because it was on the news, CNN, NBC.
Right,
I mean,
right.
it's a big deal.
Right.
3 Americans were basically going to be executed. You know, this is what it was all
Yeah.
going to come down to. And then what transpired is that a Saudi prince and 2 archaeologists from Riyadh University came out when he showed them these petroglyphs of the cow and bull gods Apis and Hathor. They said, that's Egyptian. That's never been part of Arabian culture. They ejected him from the country. He never got this evidence, and now he needs to get that evidence to tell this story. And so he pays this man, he leaves. 6 hours later, you connect, and you're already on the way there.
Exactly.
That's right.
This
That's right.
Exactly.
Something
this-
about this place, the information has to get out.
Okay,
Yeah, you can see it happen.
Okay, get out. But when you get there, now it's years later, you know, after the whole imprisonment incident,
Right. That was 86
White
or
gets
85.
released.
somewhere. Yeah.
And so he's back in America, makes news back in America. But now you go there, and there's a fence around this area, this
Right.
altar to the golden calf, which
Exactly.
was on this little hand-drawn thing.
Right.
There's also a fence at the base of the mountain. Tell what happened when you got there.
See, and let me say this, that those fences were typical archaeological fencing that was put up by the government. We had been...
You'd seen it 100 times all over the
I've
country.
seen it all over the country. And normally we would pull up to these things, the gates would be open, we'd go in. They built a little guard, what we call a guard building or a guard shack there. And when I was coming in from the east, the thing that caught my eye was the fence.
Right.
I mean, I knew that was significant, so we
Right.
pulled right over to
okay.
it.
Well-
Very first thing, I'm a dad. The reason why I always carried video cameras and cameras was I wanted to document my children. I always loved taking video of my kids, and so I was one of those dads with a video camera on his shoulder all
Yeah.
the time. You know, so we had the equipment, the gear with us. Got out of the truck, and I'm looking through the fence, and I could see the petroglyphs of the cows. And you know, be honest with you, look, one of the main things I was looking for was any evidence, biblical evidence that might have been at that location. Here's a big one. I mean, this is huge. It's a pile of rocks. It's the perfect place for this whole event to have taken place. You get a mental or visual of the golden calf celebration in the Bible of what they were doing.
Now these
You can
petroglyphs,
see this happening here.
which we're seeing right now, these petroglyphs, these cows, you've got pictures of them. These things are like 4 feet long.
yeah,
are
they're
they not?
huge.
These,
They're
because
Several of them are
right
huge.
here
No,
from this, it looks small, but these things are huge.
Yes.
It's not Bedouin scratching
Oh, no.
of cattle. This is very deliberate, and yeah, they are 4 feet to 3 to 4 feet in length, and so I circled the. You can see in fact the videos on that on the DVD set. I mean, it's
That's
one of the
right.
roll-ins.
Yeah, we're
You see
showing
the
them a little
live
bit
video.
now, but on the set, you've got the whole thing on there.
Right.
We got
Right.
really good pictures of it
Yeah.
now.
That's right.
Over
You
the
got pictures of you and Tim and others right beside it, so you can get an idea of how
How
big it
big,
is,
right.
and that is on your
Right.
DVD. We don't
Right,
have
exactly.
that for this
Right.
presentation, but on
Exactly.
your DVD, that's what I was very excited.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the story's just begun, because now they are going to then be welcomed in, so to speak, by the Bedouins who are going to be in charge of the security for this, and then it's all going to come unglued in just a few minutes when they first start to get the evidence of the real Mount Sinai. I'll tell you, they find out that this is one archaeological site that nobody steps on. But you're going to have to be back with us for our next episode. This is Michael Rood, and thanking Jim and Penny here in their home in Gulfport, Mississippi, to finally lay out the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, put the facts before the world, because the Almighty has ordained that the rocks are crying out. The testimony that the Hebrew Scriptures are true is coming out, and now the professionals, even entire schools of archaeology, are having to eat their words if they're honest. If they're not, they're going to try to keep on hiding the fairy tale that they invented 100 years ago because someone misread a hieroglyph in a Karnak, Egyptian hieroglyph, and then equated it with the Bible. Once they messed it up, and entire schools of Egyptology and archaeology were built on that, you can bet they're going to defend their ignorance to the death. Modern Egyptologists and modern archaeologists that all deny that Israel was ever in Egypt, deny the Exodus, deny that there's any Mount Sinai. In fact, it was the director of the Rockefeller Institute, the Israeli Department of Antiquities, who said he refused to look at any of the evidence of Mount Sinai because he said it's a literary invention. No one will ever find it. Refused to even look at the evidence. So, ladies and gentlemen, you are going to see the evidence that is changing people's lives around the world, and it is because of Jim and Penny Caldwell that all of this is now out here and available. Jim, Penny, thank you for allowing me to come into your home and for being part of our Hanukkah celebration.
Oh, Michael, we appreciate you inviting us, and it is our pleasure to have you here.
Great to be here.
Well, where we left off is you have just arrived at Jebel Luz,
Exactly.
the almond, the mountain with the almond, and you have arrived. You have already seen through the fence, and you've gotten the video of the altar to the golden calf with Apis and Hathor on that.
That's right.
And so you've arrived at the mountain. This is what's happening. Now, tell us what transpires from here, because this is where it gets a little bit on the intense side,
Yes.
unexpectedly.
Right. So after I got the video that I was looking for and the photographs, I was looking around and looking toward the west, and you could see up the valley there. And the mountain kind of disappeared into the clouds somewhat, so I could tell it was a really high area. And I thought, let's get back in the vehicle, and we're going to drive over to that direction. And couldn't see the cave, couldn't see any of the artifacts or any of the area where the corral is. But we drove over, and then as soon as I came around the corner, that you kind of dip down in the Wadi Abiyad there, you kind of come back up an embankment, and there's the fence, the archaeological fence that the Saudis have put up. And so it's got the blue sign, typical blue sign of the warning, and that you're not supposed to enter.
Archaeological site by royal decree, et
exactly.
cetera, et cetera.
So that's there, and then right inside, tucked inside, was the a guard shack, as we call it now. It's typical of most archaeological sites in Kingdom.
Yeah, you've been to dozens of them, so
Knew
there's
something
nothing unusual.
was behind this, something significant going on, and within minutes, a Bedouin truck drives up. And he comes up alongside of us, and they get out, and I with his son, yeah, young boy, I'd say about 10 years old or so, and they get out. He's very friendly, very friendly. Salam alaikum. I mean, we do our greetings. We talked for a minute. You know, we talked about Jamila, the beautiful mountains, and it was late in the evening. It was probably around 4 o'clock or so, and so he got the impression, I think, because we couldn't communicate very well, that we wanted a place to stay. We were interested in staying inside that building. It was not occupied at this time.
Oh, I
Right?
see.
So there was
Okay.
no evidence of anybody around. So,
Okay.
and it was getting ready. It was that evening where it was misting and looked like it was going to be a real cold night. So that kind of set that up. And then he opens the gate, and we all walk in together, and we go over to this building, and we walk inside and look around with nothing in there but a couple of bales of hay.
Yeah.
And so he leaves. Suddenly, he kind of says something to his son as he leaves, and I'm asking his son after he leaves. I'm saying, "Is there anything around here? Any? I think I said white marble or white pillars or something. I was indicating that. Is there anything else?" And he says, "Come home, yeah, come with me." So we walked and followed him. Went around the corner about 150 yards down this dirt track, in between the valley, and came right up on the pillars, the corral, and then I looked to my right and up. I mean, it still gives me chills today to think of it. I looked up and I could see Elijah's cave just crystal clear. And I
So-
realized, again, this pattern of the identikit that I had put together, there is what I expected to see if I was at Mount Sinai.
And
This
here
was
are the
perfect
patterns of
picture.
evidence right
Yes.
there
Right in
on
front
the
of us.
ground in
Precisely.
front of you.
Precisely.
Both her and I, at almost the same moment, hit the ground. I'm telling you, it just took
What do
my
you mean hit
knees
the
out-
ground? What?
Took my knees out from
I
under me.
mean,
I felt an
literally
overwhelming
fell.
sense of a holy presence, a knowing in my knower in a very deep way that we were at a significant place. This was where something incredible had happened many years ago, and she and I believe, probably simultaneously heard this. Yeah, you're at the right place, and take this to my people Israel. I mean, this was what we heard in all of this. And we got up, and the young man was there, and we kind of shook it off. This is incredible, but he did not, and the Bedouin had not allowed me to have any camera equipment. He said, Mafi, no camera equipment, no photographs.
Now,
And
is this typical of an archaeological site? No photographs of it?
Not most of the time they're not manned.
Yeah,
Most of the time
nobody's even there.
there's
The
no
gate's
reason.
open?
Yeah, it's the gate's open.
Yeah.
So we end up walking back. Now this probably took about an hour. So we get back, and about the time we're walking back towards our truck, the Bedouin that was there initially, the father drives back up, followed by another truck. And this is where everything gets flipped on its head.
Everything went very quickly from the most beautiful, in
Experience.
fact, holy experience to one of
And a warm welcome, Bedouin, traditional Bedouin, Mikasa
I look back on it
Sukasa.
and say it was impossible. I don't know how that happened.
Because,
So
because
what happened now when they pulled up? To put us in that moment.
we found out these are called frontier forces. They are desert police, so to speak.
Okay.
Because this is in a very, very remote area of the country. And I kid you not, when I tell you they got out of that truck, they looked like the old, in Westerns, what you would call the bandoleros. They had bullets strapped across.
Yeah,
this way
that's
and
a bandolero.
That's what it looked like. I mean, it was
that's it.
shocking.
They had their rifles, probably Kalashnikovs. I believe.
Kalashnikovs or,
And
yeah.
they had them. They didn't have them pointed right at us at that present time, but they just got out of the truck bristling with weaponry. I mean, this is just serious. And we had been at this time. We had been in that country for 3 years. We had crisscrossed the deserts. We had met all manner of Saudis out in the deserts. They had never been anything to us but hospitable. It is known of Arabia. They're known for their hospitality. And even
Something's different
there's
here.
something different here.
Yeah.
Even though the fencing was the same as you
Tell
see
me
in other
about it.
parts of the country, the fencing was not any different from any other archaeological site, nor was the sign. It was the same old sign. But the reaction when they saw us there was unlike anything we had ever experienced. And they made it extremely plain that they were very displeased, even with this Bedouin and his precious little son. I mean, they're yelling and I don't
They
know
were
what
shouting
they
at the
saying.
gatekeeper,
Right.
for letting us even go in around the corner.
Right, that's what we
and back there.
assumed. They were speaking
Yeah.
very quick Arabic, and with our very few words of Arabic, we didn't know exactly what they were saying.
They were
They were
bashing him for the
not-
gate being open.
Right.
You know,
They didn't want that gate open.
they didn't want that gate
They were
open for any
yelling
reason.
at them, for ever letting us in. They shoot us out of there, slam the gate shut. They're still yelling and yelling back and forth with the father. And then as they're walking us back toward our vehicle, now you have to understand in Saudi Arabia, particularly in the Eastern Province where we lived, there's a lot of sand in that area. It's much more mountainous in the Northwest. Still a lot
And that's
of
where we
sand,
are,
okay,
Northwest Saudi Arabia right
Northwest,
now,
yeah.
Right.
Midian.
But where we live is over in the Eastern Province, and we go out on the weekends and we do desert running, and you have to air down your tires and you have to have sandboards because you get stuck all the time.
Okay.
So on the front of our truck, we had sandboards bolted down with a shovel. And why is the shovel there? To dig you out when you get stuck in the sand. That's all it was. And we had that shovel on the front of our truck for the
You're
All
in
through
Egypt.
Egypt. Yeah, we're in Egypt.
Yeah.
Everywhere we went, that's part of our vehicle.
When they literally saw that shovel on the front of that truck, they just yelled and screamed.
They
and hollered.
exploded.
And they pulled the weapons. They didn't point them right in our faces or anything, but they actively pulled them and
They were ready.
said, "Imshi." In other words,
Yeah.
get out, Tabuk, Tabuk, Tabuk. In other words, they wanted us all the way to Tabuk, which is a 2.5-hour drive from the region. And night is coming. They wanted us to drive out of the desert, get all the way to Tabuk, and get out, and do not come back.
So they're sending me out at night, by the way, because it's dark by this time. I mean, we're right at
Yeah.
That's
And
something
the
you would
Bedouin
never
do that.
You
The
would never
Bedouin
do.
would never
Number
make
one,
No,
I didn't
no.
know the area. I came in from the south. Now I have to leave to the north. I'm going out to Wadi Abiyad, which I chose not to go into in the beginning in the first place.
And now you're driving
then-
out an unknown wadi.
We had
An
to.
unknown wadi. And
Yeah.
what is amazing is just, and I just remembered this, that as we got to the highway, just as I pull up on the highway, I got a flat tire. I mean, we made it out of there.
It's true.
Wow.
But it was
It's
3
true.
in the morning by the time I had figured out the wadis and there's no road. I mean, you're
Yeah.
making your own road as you're going out, and we were lucky to get out of there at all that night.
Oh, so that probably after that you just said, okay, we're never coming back here again, and just forget about the whole thing then, huh?
Nothing but trouble.
Oh my
Okay,
goodness.
all right. Tell us what happened.
Michael, let me tell you, 2 things happened to us there. The very first thing that happened to us there, when we realized where we might be standing, as I told you,
How
we literally,
significant
it buckled our
this was.
knees in a very literal manner. We literally hit the ground because of how the sheer
Holiness.
awesomeness and
sight.
holiness of what we felt there. But the other part was, as we were leaving, you know, your adrenaline calms down after a little while, and then I'm telling you, it was like white hot anger hit us in our faces. It was like, wait a minute, we are not
these
here
people?
to do any damage to anyone
right.
or anything. Why are they so angry? Why are they banning us from going in here? And why are they treating us this way? Why are they treating their own people this way? What is different about this
What is
place?
going on?
Right.
And
right.
we immediately determined, in fact, it came rolling right out of Jim's mouth, with which I have to admit both thrilled me and terrified me at the same time. He said, the next 5 days I'm off, we're back. We're coming right back here to this place. And I tell you what, Michael, this was at the beginning of February when this happened to us. The last week of February, we rolled right back up into that same site.
Okay, now we've done a little preparation for this site, though, have we
Yes,
not?
we
So let's get back on the road. Let's get back here because we need some paperwork, don't we?
So this time, I know I'm going back, and I started to look at what I would need to enter this area legally. So we applied for permission to go into the site. Didn't really know exactly where it was or how to describe it. That kind of fell apart. But to get into any registered site, you have to get you just apply with a letter, and they'll usually give it to you with no problem. And then I got a travel letter, which to travel across kingdom, even to go to Egypt, I had to have a travel letter that says where we're going, what towns we're going through, you know, that kind of detail. That has to be approved by the Department of the Interior, and then when you get that back, then you're allowed to get through the checkpoints to get you to the next area. Each province has its own set of checkpoints. So I had all of that done, and then the planning, what we were going to do and how we were going to go into the area, and 3 weeks later, what happened is I was working that evening shift still. So then I had 5 days, right at 6 days at the end of that shift. So we had to stay home 3 weeks, worked my shift, then we're back in the truck, driving straight back into the region. Now, I'm just going to backtrack
This is
to the
like
first
a
trip.
20-hour drive, right?
It's about a 25-hour drive. Yeah,
Okay.
we were targeting a hotel we had stayed in the first time we came through Tabuk, called the Al Adel Hotel, and that would be our destination for the night of that night, and then the next morning we would be back out at the site. But the very first trip, when we came into the Wadi Rait and we were heading up towards the mountain from the south, I came across a vehicle up ahead crossed my track. And I'm heading and approaching him, and he stops. So it would have been very unfriendly of me, let's say, for me just to drive by him, because that would have thrown a flag up and he'd have run us down anyway. So I knew I pulled up and didn't approach him too closely, and I stopped about 30 yards away.
Looked like an official vehicle, or?
No, it didn't. It really just looked like a Bedouin truck, but a nice one, Bedouin. And he got out in full, like a Bedouin, the Thoban Gutra, and very proper. And he comes over, but very friendly, greetings, all Arabic. And then I started to tell him that we were looking for this place called Jebel Lawz. And I was saying Lawz as we see it most of the time, L-A-W-Z. And that's the way it was written on the map. And so I'm saying Lawz, and then we talk about a mountain, and then I'm drawing things in the sand, and he finally says, it's Jebel Luz. And I said, oh, yeah, maybe that's it, Jebel Luz, yeah. So he says, no, he says, you go this way, and you go around this, way. He gave me direction, drew it on the sand. Fantastic. I said, thank you, sir, thank you. And I walked back to my truck, and I reached up on the dash, and I grabbed a can of honey roasted cashews. Just hit open it, man. It was just wonderful. A couple of bites. I'm going to give it to this guy. So I walked back. The Saudis love nuts, especially the Bedouin out there. And I offer them to him before he gets back in his truck, and he refuses. No, I don't want this. Don't. And so I insisted. And, just shook his hand and said, here, don't take this. This is for me. So he did, and off he went. Back to the second trip, we arrived in the area within 20 minutes, maybe?
Yeah, the most.
20 minutes, they're on us. I mean, the frontier forces, actually it was not the same guys. It was like an outback police, I would call him. He was a single, they came up, they had a truck, they had a gun mount. I mean, it was pretty crazy stuff.
All right.
That wasn't manned, but this gets out. Yeah, no 50 caliber, kind of rap patrol looking. Anyway, he comes around and he starts threatening us. And I mean, we're already on the defensive. The flags are up, and we're backing up a little bit. And so I whip out my Agama with my travel letter. Right? I'm showing it to this guy. He can't read. He don't know what it says. He don't see anything on it. I said, no, Jebel Luz, I have a travel letter to be here. And he's got a gun. And so he promptly backs up and points it towards us and said, no, you get in your truck. And another vehicle came up.
You follow me.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And they pinned us between the two vehicles, and then they drove us probably 3 or 4 miles away to an outback station. So this is
tin shack,
tin
dirt
shacks,
floor,
block buildings, just an outback looking, shacks and these kind of things.
Long story short, Chelsea and I, my daughter and I, had to be left in the car. They would not let us. They
wouldn't let them in. No women in this place.
Drug our son and Jim off into the center of this thing, interrogate them for like 4 hours. Until finally, Chelsea and I are in the car, and we see another car.
Was it a friendly escort, or you say dragged in? What?
No.
Not particularly friendly.
Wasn't friendly at all. But,
very forceful.
Very forceful.
Chelsea and I see another truck driving up, and somebody get out and go into the back of the building, and we don't know what's going on with them inside.
Right. So we've been on the floor, shouted at. They had my paperwork.
Literally on the floor.
Well, we're sitting on a dirt floor in front of coals and some logs and some wood, and they've got a coffee pot going. They're shouting at each other, at us, and there was nobody that spoke enough for us to communicate, enough English. And my Arabic was limited to probably 50 words, so I wasn't speaking much. And they were just insisting that we shouldn't be there. And so I hear some noise in the next room. And one of them grabs me and makes me get up, and he drags me into that office, into that part of the building. I hadn't seen it yet, but there was a desk, and there was a guy turned around, leaning over, that was doing something, and this guy brings me. I'm standing there. He's shouting at the guy that's turned around, and suddenly he turns around, and when he looks at me, our eyes met. It was the guy I had given the cashews to the 3 weeks before.
Turns out
Oh
he's
my
the honcho in charge of these
He
guys.
was the captain of the station. And he turned around and started shouting at everybody and telling them, "What are you doing to these people?" And he looked at my paperwork. No, alhamdulillah, no problem. He's saying, this is fine. He said, but then he spoke a little bit of English, and he spoke enough to tell me that we could go back to the area, but we couldn't go behind the fences.
And no cameras.
And that we were allowed, no cameras, and that we were allowed to camp in that area.
You were?
And yeah,
Okay.
He let us camp
legally
there.
let us go. We went
But,
back. We went back.
Not behind the
And
fence.
not behind the
and
fences.
No pictures.
Okay.
It was one of those trips that was more of setting a tripod up, shooting across the valley, and those kind of
Yeah,
things
still didn't get
that
any
we
good
accomplished.
pictures.
But
Okay.
always considered every trip we went
We
there
learned a
15
little bit
times
more.
that we would learn a little bit more about
Okay.
the area.
So far you've got the video of the altar of the golden calf.
Right.
You've
Right.
got that.
Right.
And the corral area by the altar.
But
you
no
know,
pictures
pictures.
of it yet.
No, it's only
We
here.
had seen
Oh,
it
okay.
once.
Yeah,
You
remember?
saw it,
Remember
but
that
because it's
Bedouin
getting
wouldn't-
dark.
Wouldn't allow us to bring cameras.
Yeah,
back.
Oh, that's
Right.
right, inside
Right.
the
So
fence.
this is the passion that I have. The drive is to get in there and get those pictures.
And get the proof.
So
Right,
remember what
right.
the captain has told me. He wasn't that friendly to the point where I could abuse that friendship, but he was
Right.
saying that I'm gonna let you go back there and you can camp there, but don't go behind the fences.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So
So that altar to the golden calf with the petroglyphs on it, that was one of the big keys, and that's one of the first videos that I got.
Right.
That altar of the golden calf, and that turned out to be the release key for Wyatt and his sons, because when they went out there and showed that to the archaeologists and the Saudi prince, they recognized that they were telling them the truth.
Yep.
And so at that point, it was not an archaeological site. It was open. There were no
Right.
fences. There was nothing there.
Right.
And so, of course, he was ejected without any proof. You come back in, they've got the fences up, and you are the first ones to start getting that information out.
Right.
As a matter of fact, the only ones who ever really got anything out.
yeah.
As far as we know, anyway.
Yeah, well, we haven't seen it in this
I hadn't
part
seen
of the
anything. It's
world.
been a long time.
That's
from
right.
that-
And the
that
internet's
moment,
a
so-
pretty big world now.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
Very
Okay,
true.
so now we're the second time you're camping there. Now, what do you get to see this time? Because we're
Yeah, again, it was more of a reconnaissance type
Okay.
thing. And what I was able to do on this trip was figure out a place to put my vehicle where I would not be visible. Let's just put it simply.
okay.
Right?
All right.
So the next trip was beginning to be planned already. And this trip ends up being all the way to April. We go back to Rastanura. We assimilate the
more days,
information
don't
that
we?
we've
Yeah.
we've seen. I look at my picture, go through the video, more maps. I'm studying, and so we plan the next trip.
And what we decided, what we learned from this trip is we cannot come in on the front side of the mountain.
No,
They
no.
will be on us. It'll be a wasted
Yeah.
trip. So what we have to do is not try to get in the fence this way. We've got to go around.
We're going to
way
climb over the back of the
backside
mountain so we
and
don't
climb
enter any
over the mountain
fences.
and come down in the fence.
This is it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you,
a
the
big
adventure is just beginning. We're going to get back to Mount Sinai. We're going to hear the details of the two summits of Jabal al-Lawz. We're going to go to Sinai and to Horeb in this next segment, so do not go anywhere. Call your friends, call your neighbors, call your enemies. This is the time. Jim, Penny, let's get back there to Mount Sinai, because we've got, you've set everything up.
Right.
You know that you're coming back, and now the reconnaissance is over. You know where you can hide the truck. You know how you can sneak into the area. But even though you have letters of authorization, you know that they're not going to let you do what needs to be done to document this.
Yeah, absolutely. It seemed to us, in fact, Michael, that there were they were specifically watching over this area. Now we had a lot of
Yeah,
our
it
own,
sounds like
a lot
that.
of our own reasons for believing it would be that for this reason
It's
or
an
for the other.
understatement, yeah.
But long story short, we had on that last trip, we hadn't gotten a bunch of photographs of anything because the fence to the mountain area is so far out.
It
You
is,
from the
yes.
fence, you cannot see where the pillars are. You can't see any of that stuff from the fence. We knew from walking back there with the Bedouin boy that it was way behind that white guard shack. So
They didn't want anyone to
No.
even come close to
No.
approaching
No.
what seemed to be insignificant things at the base of that mountain.
No, and you
Yeah.
know, I'm going to insert this just real quickly right here to their commendation, I will say, although it aggravated us to no end because we were stopped here and there and everywhere from doing what we wanted to do. To their commendation, because they have been so protective of this site, it is preserved.
Right.
And we are very, very grateful for that. But from that last reconnaissance trip we took, we knew we couldn't get into that fence from the front. It wasn't going to happen.
So now we're going to come from the
We're gonna-
other side, and what did you find? This is one of the incredible things.
A new plan, a new direction. We're not giving up,
Nope.
but we're going to come in and we're going to get a
Even more
strategy that's going to
determined.
be more, it's going to work for us. So that strategy ends up being, we're going to go to the west side of the mountain. We're going to climb over the mountain, and then we're going to come in down into the valley, not crossing any fences. Doing exactly what we said we would do. Come down into the valley.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would, and then I would be able to get my photographs. So that was the plan. We flew back right at the beginning of April. We actually entered the air April the 2nd. So it was the first that we flew into Tabuk. So we're talking
So now we're
3 months
flying in.
later. Now we're flying in this
Okay.
time. We rent a vehicle in Tabuk and we drive out to the west side, going through Al Zita down towards Al Bad. And then I just target an area where if I take a turn to the left and end up going east, that I'll come to the backside of Sinai. That's what the plan was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not the way it worked out. Because the ranges coming off the mountains are so convoluted, so twisted, that you can only go where you can put a vehicle. So I had to follow the tracks that lead up into these areas. And we ended up coming into a huge box canyon on the backside of what we now know as Horeb. And when we entered this box canyon, we looked down to the south, and there was a huge boulder sticking up on a knoll about a half a mile away that just stood out. I mean, he just was standing there, and both her and I looked at each other and said, wow, that is unusual. I hadn't seen anything like it. Looked like a giant pylon sitting there. So
Now, when you say huge boulder, what people are seeing, and what you were looking at that point is this is like 60 feet tall.
It's 60 feet
Exactly.
tall. Yeah.
And it's sitting atop a pile of boulders that's a couple of 100 feet high.
Yeah, it's
I
a
mean,
climb
this thing
to
is
get up
way
to it.
up.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
up in the air.
Yeah.
It would have been a prominent feature in the landscape to the ancients.
Sure.
It's one of the
Yeah.
few things that you can, with your eye at a distance, actually pick out.
Oh,
Because everything gets
Very
hazy
easily.
and blurred
Very
over,
easily.
but your eye sees this. So did my camera, because I got the first video of this on that trip.
Mm-hmm.
And then we drove over to it. And we climbed up the hill. We ended up coming in on the east side, and we actually walked right through the split in a rock. So it's a giant boulder. In the ancient past, it had been split, separated.
Mm-hmm.
And walking through it, we realized that at some point in the past, that water had come from the base of this rock, and possibly was the reason why it was split the way it was. But there had to have been a deep underground aquifer at high pressure that would have come up through this thing to do what we were seeing. And on the
Deep
back
channels
side,
cut
on the
through.
west side, we turned around and we snapped a photograph that ends up being the photograph of our ministry, our research ministry. And this is what was unusual about it. We went down to the base of this stone. We turned around and snapped this photograph. We'd been up there for a couple of hours. And in the photograph is a goat in the picture.
Little white
a little white goat in the picture. And it gives you a size perspective, but I always thought and pondered over that was very unusual.
Yeah, it was
Where
for
did
it
he
to be
come from?
separated by itself. Just
Yeah.
a beautiful, beautiful
And,
picture.
and I always thought that was very unusual. So
so small. I've not seen it.
yeah, it's in our logo. You'll see it
Yeah.
on
The
Yeah.
goat. The
the
goat.
goat.
show you.
The goat is in the picture. Yeah.
Okay.
Talk about I think of the
You know-
scapegoat, in that event
Yeah.
at the mountain. And I thought, what is he doing on this rock at this
Yeah.
time? No shepherd, no Bedouin in
Yep.
the area.
Nope.
Anyway, so we that's documented well. There's a lot of ruins in this area. There was a great stone, an altar stone, I call it, where there was actually steps built up to this stone. Took video of it. The patina on this rock was almost a quarter-inch thick. I mean, it's definitely shows that it's a very ancient site. And then, the purpose of this trip was really to get over the backside of the mountain and get into the valley so that we could get the images of the corral and the pillars.
And so we're not quite to Horeb at this point.
Oh, at this point, we're probably knowing now what we know through Google Earth and other things that we're about 8 miles away from our destination.
And this is very significant because the rock at Rephidim, the rock that was cleft, that split,
Right.
this was the very time that the battle with the Amalekites took place.
That is
before
correct.
we got to Horeb.
That is correct.
Right.
And so
This is a huge valley too.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
So this is actually the path that the Israelites came, and as they got there, the Amalekites attacked from the rear.
They did. And what's so vital and interesting about this, I mean, it was enough to realize, goodness gracious, could this be the rock that Moses struck? That was just amazing for us to even think about. But then we further investigated and we went further to the south and then around, turned again toward the west. And there were a whole lot of ancient stone circles that we began to walk through. And as we did, we started seeing some interesting things on the ground, and semi-buried amongst a lot of those circles, right in the area that if this is the rock, then we are standing in the Rephidim area.
Right.
And around those circles, around the corner from this rock, we started finding implements of war. We started finding sling stones. And we have verified that they are sling stones, beautifully so, in
Quartz
that they are
sling
made
stone.
from
Quartz,
quartz.
yeah.
And if you know anything about the nature of quartz, quartz does not form in round balls. It is a very crystalline structure. So these are absolutely man-made. They're about the size of my fist. And we saw numerous sling stones there. I'll just put
That's
it
right.
that way.
That's the area that we battled the Amalekites
Absolutely.
there. So it's still
It was-
evidence that's there in the desert to
Yes,
this day.
absolutely.
So to make a long
Absolutely.
story short, we end up getting, we climb as far as we can. We were beginner backpackers. The first time I've ever climbed anything like a hill or a mountain of this nature. We were poorly equipped. We didn't have the right shoes, but we make it up to a ridge that brings us to a point where we can see. Not only can we see that we missed Sinai because of the blackened peak of Sinai, you can see it from a distance, great distance, but we're also adjacent to another extremely high mountain that we now know is Jebel Luz. And as it was, there was no way, the trip was basically over because there was no way we were going to make it over these mountains. Not in the time period that we had.
Right.
Or with the climbing equipment that we had. That was the other thing. So we blast back down. We're back down in our vehicle. We turn around, and so we have a couple of days. And I'm saying, what are we going to do with this time? I said, I don't waste a minute. You spend all this money, all this time, this energy,
Right.
the vacation, everything you're doing to get over there and get something. The Split Rock was a fantastic find. I mean, we're just thanking God every day that was something that we were privileged to see.
And this is
Right.
one of
And-
the things that
and
I saw
discover.
that, and that's what I was asking Wyatt, who is this? Because I could see Penny.
Yeah, you can see her
Walking
not
around.
a little clear, but she's there. And so, that's when he said, just put his foot down. And
Yeah.
said, I'll give you this, but I will not tell you who these people are.
Right,
right.
And that
I
was it.
understand
And
that,
so
yeah.
it's like, okay, he's honoring the request you made to
That's
him.
exactly
And
right.
so if I don't know, I can't say anything. And
That's it.
I'm happy with that. But
Yeah.
that's the
That's
first
it.
time, the first time that I saw you was on that video there at the
Wandering
Split
around
Rock.
at the rock. Yeah, that was me.
So now we're going to get out of there. We've got some other things that
Right.
are evidences.
We ran across a place that is still just so amazing to us today. What we decided was, okay, we're up in this area. We're going to head further down and head westward toward the Gulf of Aqaba. And let's just see.
So this may be the path that Israel would have taken.
Exactly.
And it was
Starting to think in that
literally
direction.
7 weeks from Passover until we got to Mount Sinai. 7 weeks, and so
it was a
what's
process.
There? What do you see?
So as we came around, you have to go where the mountains will allow you to go.
Yeah.
You can't just drive over the
Natural
mountains.
paths.
So there are natural pathways all down, leading down to the sea, but there's not very many of them, which we were grateful for. So we were heading down this one, coming from this Split Rock area and through this area where we found these sling stones on the ground. But as we continued further on and made our way toward the sea, we came across an area that had a whole pile of palm trees, which is not so unusual there. I mean, it's Saudi Arabia. There are palm trees in various locations.
Right,
So this was
a
not
little
so
oasis.
unusual. What did catch our eye about this is there was a certain and particular type of a palm called the dam palm. And it's the kind of palm that goes up and branches off and with a branch structure at the top, as opposed to a single trunk, and it comes up and goes into the palms. This one comes up and breaks into branches, and on each of the ends of the branches there are palms. The only place we had seen those before was in Egypt. So this was unusual to us. So we decided, well, this is unusual. Let's stop and dig around in here. And Michael, after 3 big circles around this segment of palms, we couldn't believe our eyes. But amongst the palms, we counted 12, exactly 12 wells. And in fact, in more thinking about it, now the Saudis have these, and you'll see pictures of these. You'll actually see film of these. But the Saudis in latter years have come and they've put concrete barriers around the top of them to keep people from falling in and that kind of thing, because they're very deep old wells. And I say wells,
They're about 35
they could
feet
be,
deep. I mean, they're way down there.
They could be
The water
springs.
level is today.
Right.
And of course, obviously,
They
it would be an
could be
underwater
springs.
source there, but spring would be something I would feel is more flowing out of a well, where these were not.
Right.
But you could see the original
Different structure between a
Right,
spring and a well.
right.
The Saudis will put these concrete cylinders down over the original structure, but you could see down in the well, you could see where the original platform was, where you would walk up a stair, steps, and you can see how the stone round, and then it goes into like a rectangular stone, and then the cylinder is set on top of it.
That's right.
You could see the original depth. So there's about 5 or 6 foot of.
So we
soil
have,
on top of
exactly what the
Ancient
scripture
wells.
said. Well, it said there
12
were
wells
70
and-
palms there at the time, 70 palms, and 12 wells at Elim.
that's right.
And the 12 wells are
That's right.
still there.
And they would be.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
right. Why
Yeah.
wouldn't they be?
Sure.
You'd have to preserve these things because
Right.
they'd be used for thousands of years.
Absolutely.
And
Right.
so now that is on your way because you're
Right.
reverse
We're going
engineering.
exactly.
Yeah, we're heading
exactly.
To the
We're
sea.
heading to the
They
sea
would have been
instead
coming
of
That's
from
right.
the sea.
So again, in perfect order on that.
Yeah.
Which you don't see
Exactly.
over on the Sinai Peninsula. It's got to be the exact order because
Right.
everything is in chronological order. Nothing's missing.
And you know what, Michael? Before that day was over, we were coming into an area where there's actually a higher mountain range as you go toward the sea, and there are only several cuts that you can get through those mountains to get to the sea. And we're continuing to follow this one down as the hours go by. We've passed Elim, and we get a little bit further, and we come into this place where it looks like there's a big crack in this mountain range, and we knew the sea had to be right on the other side of it just by virtue of how long we had traveled. And we didn't know whether we could see it from afar, but we didn't know whether we could make it through it or not. I mean, it looked like it was that narrow. But lo and behold, when we get there, we see an area where there is water bubbling up out of the ground. Now, this is an unusual thing for us. We live in the Eastern Province, and while there are certain areas in the Eastern Province that are fed with springs, we had never seen this in this Western Province, and we were in a time of the year where all the water usually is dried up by the first part of April because it's already getting in the 90s as far as temperature goes.
Right,
So
right.
the rainy season has passed. Any little water has just dried up by now. And here's this water that's kind of, it wasn't a large area, but it was an area where there was water and you could tell it was moving water. This was coming up
Out of the ground.
out of the ground.
Right.
Out of the rocks. I mean, the gravel and the area.
And so this is in April. Yeah, and so we're really at the time where Israel went through this very same area.
Yes. Yes.
Because after Passover is before Shavuot, so we're at the same time period of time.
And
this water is a little different.
Michael, I
it's-
am
Gets
telling
better.
you,
Yeah, it gets better.
we thought that was a phenomenon, and we took a bunch of pictures of that. And no, we didn't taste it because you're always worried about, they've got their
No, we don't taste the
flocks and
water in
stuff
this
going through, and we
region.
just
Oh, yeah.
we didn't want to wind up very, very ill. So we took some pictures of this area. We made a notation that all around the edge of this water pool, it looked like it was salty. I mean, it just looked like it was a
High
salt
mineral
spring of some
content.
kind.
They're probably not drinkable anyway.
Right,
But I mean,
right.
there
It
was
didn't look.
something
It
to
didn't look fresh. It was
Right.
clear water.
Well,
but it didn't
I
look
do
fresh.
believe the scripture
waters
says
were
the
bitter.
water were
Well, they were
bitter.
bitter.
Yeah.
And
So
So it fit that
but
very well.
it was just this pool, so to speak. So we decided, well, we have got to try to get through this crack in the rock. And when we got close enough to it, it was wide enough to get a couple of trucks through.
It was actually a seep, just like going into
At
Petra.
Petra.
If you ever notice that, it was a water cut seek or a ravine going back. Same thing here.
These were high cliffs
High
on either
cliffs
side.
on each side, and you couldn't tell. You could look straight ahead and not see a path. As soon
Right.
as you got there, it
Then
opened
it would
up
open
wide
up again.
in
Yeah.
a
And,
different
and you
direction.
could go.
like being
It's
in
just-
a cave. You
yeah,
just can't
something-
tell.
Right. The
But
funny
as
thing,
yeah,
the funny thing is, as we got a little bit further down, there were some places where we barely got the truck through, but then it would open up again. But we hadn't gone into there very far, where up from the ground again came a bubbling stream. And at this point, it's a running stream. It's
Yeah,
about
we have
this
good video
wide
of
or
this,
so.
too.
We've got video of this thing, and in places, and you can still see this this like salt incrustation on the edges. And this thing wound its way all the way down, almost to the sea. And we finally popped out where you could actually see the sea, and realized, wow. Is
one of the
this
only
the
entrances
place
to get into the
they
area.
came through?
We'd had to turn
And
right
is
there.
that Mara?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
That's it. The only access.
And
The
but
only
and I'll
access.
tell you, it wasn't very long after that we popped out looking at this beautiful Gulf of Aqaba, and immediately there is a patrol that's going by, and they drag. Now they weren't mad. They weren't.
They weren't as angry as
They
the
weren't
other ones,
angry. They
but,
weren't.
yeah.
But they did haul us away
Yeah, it
to
took us
their
down
little
to the outpost.
Yeah,
on
we had
the-
to show all the
frontier
paperwork.
forces.
Okay.
We
all
had
right.
another flat tire, but
we
then they
did.
let us go.
Okay,
So,
now
never help
we
with a
have
flat
just a
tire,
few
by the
minutes
way.
left in this particular segment, and I want you to take us to the peak of these two mountains very quickly, okay?
Okay.
Because this is as far as we know, you're the only two, because it took how many attempts to make the ascent
Well,
to
let's-
Sinai and Horeb?
We just described the third trip. We're going to the fourth now. The fourth trip was in September. We had the reconnaissance we did on the second trip was about where we could hide the vehicle if we could, if we were going to come in on the east side
and try to climb it.
and try to climb. We realized from the west side, from the Rephidim side, that it's impossible. There's too much distance that you have to go through and too many 6,000-foot cliffs that you have to come over. In that trip, we were able to ascend to the top of what we call Makla or Sinai on the fourth trip. We did it in 2 days. It takes good planning.
And you
it's
had to-
and
you
it's
had
an
to camp
aggressive
on the way
climb.
up. It's
You're
not a-
camping on
Yes.
the way up. You
Yeah.
can't make it
Yes.
up there in one day. So it's a huge mountain. The idea is that, yeah, this does fit the biblical description because you could be lost for 40 days up here and without any question. Nobody could find you. Nobody could see you. This is a huge area. And we were able to celebrate, and interesting that it was the fourth trip, but we were able to celebrate on 9/24/1992, the morning, which was my 38th birthday.
That's the
And that
morning
was
that you made your ascent.
That's the
Yes.
day we
That we
made
got
our
to the
ascent
very
to the
top.
top of Sinai. And that, what a blessing
Isn't
that was.
that providential?
Yeah, isn't that amazing? And it was 38, so that's another interesting date. I always
Yeah.
pay attention to those kind of things. 8 trips from the first trip. From the top of that mountain, we could see Horeb very clearly. And
It's properly called Jebel Luz.
it's proper Jebel Luz. There's 2 peaks. One mountain is Sinai, one mountain is Horeb. The typical Arab name is Makla and Luz. So these are the 2 mountains that we're talking about. There's a huge valley between them. And in the next 3 trips, we were trying to climb Horeb. And we had to come in and devise a different way to enter and then to be able to backpack. We took our kids one trip. They were with us in trying to get to a pass to get to the top of Horeb. The next trip we found what we call the burning bush. I'm not going to go into detail on that, but there's between the valleys, there is a huge cedar tree. The trunk on it is 8 feet wide, and it's most ancient. My hobby is bonsai, and I know I've seen 800-year-old cedars that are this large. This was 8 feet across. It was huge. So that there is old trees in Israel, but this appeared to be much older than that. And then on the 7th trip, we found the top of a passage to get to the top, and on the 8th, we finally made it.
We made it. And boy, I tell you what, Michael, when you're sitting on the top of that mountain, you can look all the way back to Egypt. You can see the Gulf of Aqaba. You can see Nuweiba, a little tiny spot where it's white against the horizon, against that brilliant blue water, and the starkness of those mountains that hit that blue water. It is utterly magnificent.
But one more comment is also God blessed me with another verse, and that was that I was able to spend my 40th birthday on the top of Laws. All of that effort to get there, we made it on September 24th, 1994.
And it really wasn't planned that way.
It wasn't planned that way, but what a blessing that was.
So
then we had
summits,
the
Horeb
2 summits
and Sinai, on your birthday, 2 years apart.
Yes.
2 years apart.
Yes.
So,
And now we got just a second. You've got at least there was something that you found there, and when I saw this was groundbreaking. Because this the same thing. One of the 42 camping sites of the Israelites, Har Karkum, has the same thing. But you broke the ground on this. You found something there at Sinai, and then other places. But tell us very briefly, what did you find?
Around the area of the Split Rock, there was what's called Thamudic writing on the rocks. In some of that Thamudic writing, we also began to notice what exactly may be the most pivotal finding in the whole of this. And we call them the footprints, but they're literally sandaled feet.
That's
it is
right.
very
Sandals.
plain. It's not like what some would call a cave drawing, where you would take and trace your hand or trace the toes of your feet. These are sandaled footprints. That's the first place we saw them, was in the area of the Split Rock, but we have come to know that they cover the entire Arabian
Well, we're
Peninsula.
going to do some traveling with you on that very thing, because this imprint, the sandal feet, which being down at Har Karkum and attempting to do the same thing, know that it would take hours and hours out under the hot sun to do this. And it's not a footprint, as you say. You can see the straps, you can see the toe piece. And we're going to have to wait until our next segment, because there's also a letter, a proto-Sinaitic word picture embedded in this very thing.
Without a doubt.
So we're going to be back with Israel's ancient title deed to the land. Wait till you see this. Wait till you find where these things have been located and what the real promised land is. Ladies and gentlemen, you are about to see the earth shake. Now, please take us back to Mount Sinai, and now what I consider the latest, the greatest, the big revelation. We touched on it a little bit to begin with, but what happened there? What did you see in the ground there that could change everything?
Well, you know, Michael, as we were speaking in the previous session, when we found those sandaled footprints for the first time, quite honestly, the moment we found them, the revelation of that did not hit us. We were out, as in all the previous trips, to take as many photographs of as many things that could potentially connect to this story as quickly as we could, because we knew from previous experience we're going to have a certain amount of hours here, then they're going to find us, and then we're going to be sent back to the other side of the country.
Okay, now for those who have not been with us in previous episodes, Jim, could you tell us what this sandal feet is? If you could just overview this and what it is that you found there.
Specifically to the sandaled feet, there are all over Arabia. There are petroglyphs in different types, Semitic characters.
Petroglyphs, which is carvings in rock that stay there for thousands of years.
Actually, at the Golden Calf altar, where you see these large cows, those are they're classically petroglyphs. Okay, so that's the terminology.
The etching in the rocks.
The etching in the rocks. This was fairly unique in that. Normally, when you see these types of drawings, you would find that there would be fingers and toes like she described, but these were specifically sandals. And on these sandals, on the adjacent to it, is another symbol that we found is 3 hash marks, but we found that on each set of footprints that we would find the hash marks as well.
Okay, so this is not by itself. It's an integral part of whatever the imprint of these sandal feet, chiseled in stone, showing the straps, the toe piece and all, is the 3 hash marks that is like one thing. It's one statement, whatever it is.
Exactly.
So one of the things that I was doing was documenting. I would not pass anything up that was something that was obviously man-made, right? So any stones, any structures, these petroglyphs, we didn't realize exactly what we had. It's kind of one of those things where it would take a while to assimilate all the information, let it coalesce. Other people look at it. We presented it to experts all over. We've pushed this information out as hard as we could. One of the reasons why we were persistent, back again and again, 15 times we went back into this region, risking everything to go there and do these things, was because there's a term in Islam that says erasing the signs. And you think about that you see in the world today where they're going around destroying history.
Right.
They're trying to perform what the Quran instructs them to do, and that is to erase the signs.
Yeah, we see that happening up the Armenians, the churches.
The churches are being destroyed.
Completely destroyed.
These museums, that's the first thing they target, to go in there and wipe out history and change history.
Right.
And I, not knowing that specifically, but knowing it in my heart, because we had seen several sites, one of them specifically called the Christian ruins, that we went out and we enjoyed. It was some expatriates out in the desert having a good time. They're driving their Jeeps, and one of them gets stuck, and they get out to try to dig out, and they find themselves high-centered on the top of a wall. Check this out. So they end up digging back, and there's a physical wall under the vehicle. So they managed to get off, but they called the right people. They came out and did an excavation. Come to find out, it was an ancient Christian church.
There were crosses on it.
That was
in the eastern province.
Dated so
Saudi
far
Arabia.
back that they say it's probably a church that Paul started. So you can imagine how old this building was. Later on, there's bulldozer marks out there where they destroyed it. They wiped it out, and they blamed it on the expatriates. Now, I'm sitting there saying...
Oh, really? They blamed it on
Blamed it on the expatriates. Now, who could possibly have access, number one, to get
a
a bulldozer,
bulldozer,
to drive it out there, to do that in secret, and not have anybody see them? Impossible. Impossible.
In Islam, there's no such thing as a lie.
Yeah.
You know, whatever you have to
that's
say
right.
to cover
That's right.
yourself,
That's right.
that's the truth to them.
So
But
anyway,
that's what we were afraid would start happening to this place out here.
So in relation to the footprints, she had been doing some work. We have all of the atlaus, the books of the history of every dig that's been done in Arabia. It's a collection of volumes that is 3 feet long. I mean, it's a lot of information. She was doing a study on the footprints, not necessarily specifically the footprints, but you were doing a study, and something was revealed about that led to
Well,
an
in fact,
incredible revelation, I think.
I was poring over our photographs. It was right up there in that upstairs office. I was poring over our photographs. At the same time, I had my Bible open to Deuteronomy chapter 11. And I was looking at these various pictures that we had taken of these footprints. And I would do that for a while, and then I would read for a while. And I'm telling you, Michael, I had the footprints open on the photo album, and I just happened to look down at Deuteronomy 11:24. Wherever you place the soles of your feet, and it hit me like a hammer right between the eyes, soles of the feet. And I looked over at those footprints, and I looked back over at that scripture, and I nearly jumped over that railing because it suddenly hit me. Could it be possible? Could it even be possible that all these sandaled footprints were in fact the Israelites as they wandered through the land, tracing their footsteps? There's a very interesting other scripture relating to the Exodus. And of course, the nature of the scripture reveals the loving care of the Almighty for his people as they wandered through the deserts. It says two things. Their clothing did not wear out, but neither did their shoes. Mm-hmm. And he kept them as they went through the deserts. Well, I wonder why, not only because he's a marvelous Father in heaven, does he take care of us in such a loving way, but is there another thing connected to the fact that the soles of their feet did not wear out? When in fact, all the way back to Abraham was the promise. Abraham, arise, get up, and walk the length and the breadth of the land. And if you're going to...
And it's gone for decades.
Yes.
We have no record of anything happening literally for decades after that.
And But you want to know
where did he go?
Something else that's quite interesting about that? In the Arabian Peninsula, they, of course, don't call him Abraham. They call him Ibrahim. And, of course, they believe through the promise that Ishmael was all of the promised son and whatnot. Of course, we know that that's a completely different story. Of course, the promise was through Isaac. But in their own historical record and in their own belief, Father Ibrahim was all over the Arabian Peninsula.
Okay.
They will tell it to you to this day.
All
So
right.
is
they've
it
got
possible?
nothing to hide about that fact.
Right.
Or gained by that fact,
because
either way.
they
Exactly.
changed the whole history,
Right.
and then want
Exactly.
to then say it applies to Ishmael.
Right.
But we
Right.
know that is not true. But even they recognize that Abraham
Exactly.
walked the length and the breadth of the land,
Right.
and the Almighty told him to do that.
That's
because I'm
exactly
going to give
right.
you all of that land.
Where your
From
feet
where?
go
From the Euphrates all
to
the
the
way.
river of Egypt.
That's
The river
right.
of Egypt,
That-
and,
that's
to the
And of
Red
course-
Sea and the Yam Suf. So I mean,
Yes.
yeah, I mean we're
Yes.
starting to get more and more information that shows that's a possibility. Before, we were constricted, number one, in size of the land, and this the way it's been applied, for the past 100 years or so. But now we're starting to see from other sources where people believe that the Yam Suf actually extends from the mouth of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers through the Persian Gulf, around the Indian Ocean, up
All the
through
way
the
up
Red
the Red
Sea,
Sea.
to the Gulf of Aqaba and to the Gulf of Suez.
Exactly.
So we're talking a huge land area. The Sea of Containment, which is the name of that sea, the Yam Suf,
Right.
That-
The
that's
sea of
right.
the boundary.
holding the boundary of the whole of the Arabian Peninsula.
And what is fascinating about that, Michael, is through a course of many, many other trips, we made 15 trips out to the northwest of Saudi Arabia, but we made many, many more trips into the interiors of Saudi Arabia.
So that's
One
I
crisscross,
want to
one end to
grab
the
that.
other.
Yeah, 15 times you were at Mount
Just-
Sinai.
right, just to the
in
northwest.
northwest Saudi Arabia, 15 times. So,
Right.
That's not just, somebody going in on one trip. This is years
Right.
and years, a
It's
decade
years.
and a half.
Yes.
5 to 10 days a trip. So, I mean, yeah, we spent many, many, many hours in
Absolutely.
that area.
And then
But-
now you're taking a trip of the rest of it because one thing, you're seeing these sandal feet, not just there.
That's exactly right.
Okay, where are these sandal feet? Where are they going?
They have been found all the way down into what is the current country of Yemen.
Yemen, that's
They have
right.
been found all the way across to the east side in Oman. They have been traced all the way up in the border of Iraq and all the way back through Jordan, and very interestingly, right on up through Har Khartoum.
Yeah, that's right.
I find that fascinating that there's a, as it were, pathway of footprints around the entire Arabian Peninsula that also reappear moving northward. And that we have a real interesting story in the scripture that lays claim to a fact that a group of Israelites wandered in a desert for 40 years, and then at some point, a leader named Joshua led them into a promised land. And I tell you what, Michael, it is our firm belief that those sandaled footprints that we see all over, not just what is currently Saudi Arabia, but the entire Arabian Peninsula, lead our way right to exactly where the land of the wandering was.
Now, we just found out just in the last few days because, when we're getting together, we also have David Roll that has has joined us. And so we've been having meetings with him for the last couple of days, and a bit of revelation come out about those sandaled feet over in the Sinai Peninsula of Egypt as well.
Right. He actually said that from the Nile to the east, to the Red Sea, to the Yam Suf there, that they have found footprints in that region as well.
Right.
And I see a lot of information that includes that in the original promise of Abraham.
Oh, that's right. We know Abraham was down into Egypt.
Exactly.
There's no question about that.
Right.
And
exactly.
so
it's
that was fascinating to us.
Kind of becoming a mainstream thought, I think.
Now, one of the exciting things that, we're going to see more about the sandaled feet, but in your new DVD presentation, you are showing artifacts that are, they're trying to market on the black market over there, that are these little icons, and on the bottom of them is something chiseled very interesting.
Oh, it is. This
is Saudi Arabia.
This is Saudi
These
Arabia.
are ancient artifacts. They're trying to hawk through the black market.
Yeah, coming out of
Absolutely.
graves and other sites in the country. But
and of
they're
course,
finding this stuff.
we do not have these, but we were given a video, a small little video that someone thought we might think was very fascinating. And it was our dear friend, Dr. Sung-Hak Kim from South Korea, who, strangely enough, but of course not uncommon to the Almighty, who knows exactly what he's doing at all times. We no sooner had left the country than Dr. Sung-Hak Kim and his family, his wife Jenny, his children, began to go out to the mountain.
There was a baton.
It was almost like a
handed off.
relay race.
And he had
Incredible.
seen, his information came from video that he had seen that had our pictures and our video in it.
Of course, he
And
didn't
that
know who we were
He
either.
didn't know who we were, but that inspired him to when he accepted the job and got the position that he had, to start going out to this.
That's
area.
right.
Now he's
He made
in an
12
honor
trips.
position. I mean, I understand that he has the plates of the Saudi prince on his
That's
vehicle.
exactly
and
right.
He's a dignitary.
At the time he was there, he was the personal physician to one of the major princes of Arabia. Now, this is some years ago, and the prince has since passed, and Dr. Kim is back in South Korea.
Yeah.
But he was shown a video. And I think it was probably because
And you have it. All you have to do, ladies and gentlemen, get the video and you'll see it. You'll have it in your hands. You got some black market stuff on your hands.
You'll see it.
Yeah,
And
it's amazing.
He was shown a video, and in that video, there's no sound to it or anything, and you don't see anything other than a hand turning these little pieces. But I would tell you they're about the size of your hand, and you can see them being turned around, and they are very odd little One of them or two of them are faces that are very Semitic looking faces.
Yeah.
They have
Proper
a proper
beard,
beard,
knotted
the
hair,
proper
yeah,
beard
very
and the
Semitic
hair.
looking.
And as they turn them around, and they're sort of out of a dark rock, and my immediate impression was, oh, those are the idols the Israelites were not supposed to be making. You know,
supposed to be
those
making,
little
exactly.
handheld idols, but they made them anyway. And of course, that's recorded
Sure.
in Scripture. But I'm telling you, there's 4 or 5 of them. And the craziest thing in the world is you turn them up, and when you look on the bottom, perfect menorah.
there it is. The menorah right on the bottom of
Right on the bottom
these
of
things.
these
So that's what
little
you're going to
items.
get, ladies and gentlemen. There's no way we can put it all before you. That's why you have to get the DVD. This is it. Now, you also on the video show the menorah, which is chiseled, the petroglyph right there at. Is this at Sinai?
It's
about maybe 20 or 30 kilometers to the east of Sinai. There's a valley there, a wadi area that goes through that it's covered with petroglyphs in that area. I call it the chalkboards of history because they're out there, you know, probably teaching the language. They were instructed to teach their children. The posts on the tent circles have these marks chiseled on them, you know, that they were instructed to do that. So this stuff is laying all over the ground in Arabia. But you're exactly right. Dr. Kim had found a menorah mixed with the Talmudic text,
Which is
exactly
fabulous.
dates this back to that era right around the time of the Exodus.
That's right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take just a short break. We're going to be back to discover what these texts are, what is being spoken with these sandal feet, with these hash marks, and what it has to do for the last days and Israel taking all the land that belongs to them. Now, there's another step in this because part of the sandal feet, another part of that very image chiseled in the land, was something that they have now begun to discover, and that is what is changing history. Jim, Penny, you got to tell us the rest of the story now.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely, Michael.
Well, Michael, as we continued on, we have had various people contact us over the years that have either brought us wonderful information or they've hooked us up with people who have given us great strides in the research according to all of this. And one such man is named Dr. Miles Jones. And he had spent time in Yemen. He was an English teacher actually in Yemen, but he has impressive degrees as well. He is a PhD and has taught us so very much about this Talmudic, which is what these rock carvings are called. They're petroglyphs, but there is a writing as a language beside the pictographs and such that are etched on the rocks. The footprints most of the time are by themselves, but the Talmudic text can have all manner of things built in with it.
And this is kind of a developing text as we see through the through the ages.
When Miles contacted us at the beginning, he said, "You're the guys that are out there, and you've got some pictures of in the Mount Sinai area in Arabia, right?" And we said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, I'm not interested in all of that as much as I'm interested in the writing on the rocks, because this is what I do."
Interesting.
Okay, not interested in Mount Sinai. This isn't his thing. A burning bush is not his baby.
Right.
But the writing.
The writing was his thing.
Okay.
And I tell you what, he has some amazing conclusions from the work he has done, not just on this, but with all of the origins of this language. In fact, his research leads him to believe that it was not the Phoenicians at all who came up with our alphabet, but it was indeed given to Moses by God Almighty on Mount Sinai. And this is why he was so interested in seeing, did we have any pictures of the writing on the rocks? We'll just call it like that.
Okay.
So not only did he get the law, but God also gave him the language to write the law in, and a phonetic script. And remember, their instructions were to teach this as it comes out to their children.
Right.
And from generation to generation.
We don't realize that it was not only the laws of God that they were to teach to their children, but it says, in fact, that the writing was the writing of God.
That's right. That's right.
So
Written with the finger of
Miles,
God.
Miles
literally.
has said there's a whole lot
So
more to
goes a
this
little
than meets
deeper
the
than
eye.
that. Yeah.
So I thought, oh, good, this guy is coming here. He's coming to see us at our house. We're going to show him all these, and I can't wait to show him these footprints. I cannot wait to show him these sandal footprints, because what if it's the children of Israel's footprints? You know,
Yeah.
we're all excited about this.
Again, I'm the like you've described, the logical one here, and I'm saying, I don't know about these footprints. I mean, he may be impressed, but he's really looking for the Talmudic characters. So I got this giant pile of Talmudic characters for him, and she's got the footprints. So
That's right. So he's got all these pictures of
I'm
the
trying to
writing
see
on the
what he's
rocks, and
interested
I'm harping on the footprints because that's my big thing. So he gets here, and we show him all these things, and he's all impressed with this. He can't wait to study all this writing that's on these rocks. And I show him the footprints finally, and I said, Miles, look how awesome. What if these are the footprints of the children of Israel? And he said, yeah, that's nice. I want to know what this is. And we looked at him like,
it's kind of a
what is?
wah moment, and I'm saying, what is
Well,
this?
This
Next
is the three
to-
hash marks
Yes.
that you were
We
talking
never,
That's what
about.
I was
I've
gonna
never
tell you.
really noticed that they were there.
We never really noticed them.
Yeah.
We were so zeroed
Really?
in on the sandaled
Didn't know.
footprints, we did not notice that adjacent to and sometimes connected to each of these pairs of footprints were 3 lines, like 3 hash marks.
I have to admit that I didn't see him when you first gave me the video on that with the
Right,
footprints and,
right.
and all that. I didn't notice it either.
We just, it was as though it was
took-
hidden from our sight.
Right.
A language expert to come in and take a look at this material and zero in on something that nobody else would ever
That's
notice.
exactly right.
That's right. We
And
wouldn't
you
have thought
know-
This is
anything
his
of it.
study. That's what he
When
does.
this was early in the morning, he was right here in this very house, and we went upstairs. We've got a conference room table upstairs, and he had brought with him tons of files of all the ancient scripts. And we dug and we dug and we dug through those things looking for what these 3 hash marks may be. And by the end of the day, we found out that those 3 hash marks in the Proto-Sinaitic chart were indeed the kaf. Now, or what would become the kaf. And in that, in his table, it was the 3 hash marks, and it had a line underneath them. And the definition of what that character meant was 2 things. It equally meant the cup of the palm of the hand, or the sole of the foot. And Miles went crazy. And very soon as he described this to us, we also went crazy, because not only do we have perfectly drawn sandals marking the sole of a foot, we have an alpha character, as early as it may be, an alpha character which would become the kaf, which would also mean the cup of the palm of the hand or the sole of the foot.
And of course, context, you've got your context. It is the sole of the foot.
And,
There's no
and the
question about
writing
it.
there says it's as if in our current day graffiti we would say the sole of my foot is here.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's it.
It's a way to express it, and a way to say that I was here. This is
Exactly.
me. This is what I'm putting. This I was here, and the way Miles approached it was just as a scientific evolution. The way
Right.
he broke it out, he says this is a ligature. It's a classic way to do things. It also takes the footprints from being profane in a way that they could be some type of symbol that would be worshipped. It's a phonetic character. It makes it a phonetic symbol.
Right.
And so it ends up being exactly what they could have done legally. They were able to do this without a problem. Put the footprints there with the ligature and say, I was here.
So
sole
how
of my foot was
odd do you think it is if we find a land that is covered with sandaled footprints with the additional writing of a letter that would end up coming to represent as one of its meanings the sole of the foot? So we have the picture of the sole of the foot, and we have a letter saying the sole of the foot. How much more clear do we need to understand this?
Again, it's context. We've got the context of Sinai.
Yes.
We've got all of the evidence that one would expect to find when they find the real place, which was laid out by Emmanuel Anati. It laid out in the scriptures. You
Laid out
detailed
perfect.
it.
Yeah.
You got there. You saw that little hand draw representation of, Elijah's cave, these different things. You get there. Now you find the very image that is chiseled into the land permanently.
Right.
The sole of my foot was here.
Right.
This land belongs to Israel. This is...
Yeah, no doubt about that. It opened up a new frontier for him, like a Rosetta Stone type moment. And he could see from there the way the script would evolve from Mount Sinai and the wandering in the wilderness. He takes you down into southern Arabia. Remember, he lived in Yemen. This is where this all began for him. And he says, Jim, I can see now how the script has evolved as they came into the southern area. And then you see it appear again in the land of Canaan in that same sequence. So it first goes down into the southern Arabia area, and then you see it appear in the land of Canaan. It's exactly describing the route that they took as they went into the promised land. So it's just another one of those things that layers on top as we find these pieces of evidence that all fit into that identikit that we talked about, the scripture and the way it describes these events. It all fits perfectly.
I'm stunned, really. When you
We are
look
stunned.
at this and you see that this is a promise of the future.
Right.
This has not been fulfilled at any time in the past.
That's correct.
And now we're going to see it, just like Damascus being a ruinous, uninhabitable heap. It is today the oldest inhabited city on the planet.
Right.
So we know that is yet to come in the future.
Yes.
Looks like they're doing a pretty good job of
it's
tearing it
close.
apart right now.
Yeah.
But,
We're getting close
Actually,
to those events.
But we are going to see the very fulfillment of that promise to Abraham, that
Right.
all of this land will go to the sons of Israel.
Right.
Not Ishmael, but to the sons of
Yeah.
Israel.
But, and the scripture actually says that the sons of them that hated thee will come bowing down at the soles of your feet. It literally says this. And so at some point we have to know and understand that all of this is going to be uncovered. I don't know what time that is. I don't know when on the timetable of God this would be.
Feels pretty close.
But,
and I would say this is not going to be a peaceful recognition.
It would probably not be.
It's going to take major war, and we do have the description of that very thing.
We do.
That
Absolutely.
Israel is taken with no hope of survival whatsoever.
Right.
No way to survive.
Right.
And if not for the hand of the Almighty rescuing the nation at the last second, they would be wiped from the face of the earth. But we see that when that happens, even the Arab nations will recognize the God of heaven.
That's right. It says that they
we
will.
have a perfect situation of bowing down at the soles of your feet. Okay, this is your
Right.
God. This is your land. We back off, and what's left of us, if anything.
That's it.
But the Almighty has got this in His charge. So that's why we don't need to be afraid when we see thermonuclear war. When all this starts brewing, it's like, okay, we've already been told these things are going to come to pass.
That's right.
The book of the Revelation, Yeshua is revealing the things which must surely come to pass.
Right.
And it ain't a pretty picture.
No.
No.
But He did not leave us unawares. And
Or without hope.
He has given us every promise of His protection and His provision
There you go.
right through the fire.
That's
so
right.
we're not to be afraid of these things. He told us they were coming. But He also said, don't be afraid. Be with me, and I will carry you through these things. So if we are safe in Him, though we go through the valley of the shadow of death, He will still be with us, and we will walk right through it with Him.
Yeah, I believe that big desert down in Arabia, that great,
And terrible
wasteland.
wilderness we talk about.
Great and terrible wilderness
Great and
is
terrible wilderness.
also called the Valley of the Shadow of Death.
I'm telling you, it has felt that way many times.
We've been
I can
down
assure
there
you.
many times. Yeah, absolutely.
It has felt that way.
So now there is a testimony of this. Leonard Muller has spent some time in Arabia and speaking with the indigenous there.
Yes.
What kind of testimony is happening among the people in Arabia? Anything to where they're saying what this stuff is?
Well, we were, Leonard was with us in the trip we made in 2003. And actually, one of the guys that we were there with, one of the Saudi guides said to him, yeah, we know that this land was traversed by Israel, and we know that all of these carvings on these rocks were put here by Israel. And in fact, what is most interesting, Dr. Kim, back to our dear friend from South Korea, Dr. Sung Ha Kim, he was able to speak fluent Arabic, and he spent a lot of time out there among the Bedouin in this area and other areas in Arabia, and he specifically asked them, who put this on these rocks? What is this? And they told him by Arabic, Yahud. And Yahud in Arabic is the Jew.
That's right.
That's what Yahuda. They call this, they call the Jews this in Arabic. And he pushed them further about this. What about the footprints? Not just the text of the Talmudic. What about the footprints? And they said Yahud. And interestingly enough, they further told him, when he asked them about the giant split rock, he further told them that they call that for generations Hada Musa Moya, which is the water of Moses. And when he said, what Moses of which do you speak? And he said, Yahud. So generationally, I would venture to say for 1,000 years, they have known what this mountain is. This is not new to them.
Thousands.
They weren't surprised when someone came in and said, this is Mount Sinai. They knew it.
Yeah.
I believe they knew it.
So,
Well, we see this in the land of Israel. It's very prominent where they'll come in and they'll rename things because how many churches of of this, that, and the other thing. They've got a church on everything they can possibly construe as the place where something happened. And so they name these things because these are what these different churches have held on to, and they want to make a holy site where they can sell some more trinkets or whatever the situation is.
Sure.
Now up north, right down below my house is Ein Kadesh. This is where Barak got together 10,000 Israelites, and this is the whole story of Sisera being killed by Yael with the nail through the head and all.
Right.
And this happened right down below my house. I'm up on the hill, and I go down there. It's an Ein today. It's still a spring. It's Ein Kadesh. But when the tourist industry started picking up, they realized that they can't really get a bus down there. They can't really build a gift shop and all down there. So they moved Ein Kadesh 20 miles north. And then, because it's convenient up there. And then they turned this into Ein Perea. Yeah. So, it's just, they'll do this. But see, you've got things that are named out in the wilderness that there's absolutely no tourist value in this.
Zero.
There's no reason why they would want to name these things that, because they want to deny anything related to, Yehud was here, the Jews were here, these are their saddled feet. Why would they want to admit that?
Exactly.
It is counterproductive to any claim that they have to the land to do that.
Exactly.
But it's an innocence of the local people that they don't have anything to hide. There's no reason for them not to deny it or one way or the other. One of the things that has happened over the last 100 years or so, we've seen an Islamization of the names of places. And that's the beauty of Leonard going back to original maps dating back to the 1400s. Those names were not changed. Again, there was no reason for them to go through and do that. And so those maps reflect what was those places were originally named.
And their Hebrew names.
And we see Hebrew names all over the kingdom.
Right.
You know, those names are being changed to Arabic names.
That's right. And this is one of the things that you bring up in the video series, which I
Absolutely,
encourage everyone to get, because Leonard has gotten a hold of some old maps.
He's a collector of old maps.
Right.
Yeah.
So some of them 1700s in French that actually have the remnants of the names of the tribes of Israel in Saudi Arabia.
Exactly.
In Saudi Arabia.
Just absolutely fascinating things.
But can't you see that this is ultimately, if you look in any Bible today, you go to the maps of the Promised Land, you see all these question marks, and you see the confusion that goes on in all of these writings.
That's right.
When you move Mount Sinai from that traditional location that's been sitting there for 1400 years now over into Saudi Arabia, it is amazing how many things come to light. I mean, things start to pick up and sites start to mean things that
Yes, they do.
should bring you to a place where you know that it actually happened. And those question marks in your Bible, we're hoping that those will be changed and reflect what really happened.
That's
Well,
right.
what I'm going to do, because you say that in your presentation about you hope that a Bible will have that, the next version of printing of the chronological Gospels, I'm going to do that. I'm going to put the accurate map in the back. It's just the Gospels at this point, but at least it will be what you have desired, that in Bibles we'll have an accurate map someday. So that's what will be there.
Fantastic.
For that, we'll
That'll
see
be
if we
great.
can, get this evidence out to the entire world.
That'll be
That's
great.
what needs to happen.
Well, we
That'll be
have
great.
just a few moments here, and in closing, how do you sum up an entire life of being led, sometimes willingly, sometimes unwillingly, by the Spirit, in where we are right now? How do you sum it up?
Well, you want to go?
I'll just say December 4th, 1991, I bent my knee and rededicated my life to whatever God would have for me to do. That was a moment where I committed wholly, totally, and completely to what God's will for my life, not what I wanted to do, not what I wanted. I was in Arabia on a sidewalk, December 4th, and in a couple short weeks, we were on this incredible trip to Egypt, and this whole vision event had taken place, and I was transformed and having been able to do something that I could have never dreamed or imagined.
Yep.
So watch out when you commit your life to what God wants you to do, because He will do amazing things.
And
I can't summarize all of these things that we've seen. It's just impossible.
because they keep continuing.
They do.
Michael, I'll tell you, there are secrets on the Arabian Peninsula. That land is so rich with answers, and our fondest prayer is that we even pray this daily, that the Saudi officials would see fit someday to open that land up, because what they have is phenomenal. And what they have are some of the finest pieces of history and the answers to questions we have all been asking for centuries. And our biggest prayer is that someday they will see fit to open it up and allow everyone to come in and see it.
We need to take it out of myth and legend and bring this back to reality.
Absolutely.